And so happy to be with you. Very much looking forward to the conversation. And hopefully, and if we do our jobs right, maybe we'll raise more than a few eyebrows with your audience.
I think that could be likely. You got all your beautiful books here laid out for us. So the Genesis 6 Conspiracy, is that your first book?
Yes, this is book 1.
Okay.
And it's subtitled How Secret Societies and the Descendants of Giants Plan to Enslave Humankind. Book 2 is more specifically for Christians because they wanted me to take the research that I did with this and go deeper into the Bible.
Okay.
And so it's subtitled How Understanding Prehistory and Giants Helps to Define End-Time Prophecy. This is the third book that just came out in April, now available on Audible, or at least it should be up today or yesterday. That was the date Amazon had set.
Okay.
And this is a book that is a novel versus research, and I co-author with my publisher who wanted to take my research both in prehistory and end-time prophecy and take that more mainstream, so to a larger market, which is the fiction market. So we've created a narrative about how the end time might come about using my research and eschatology based on where we are today and how AI is going to affect it. So the book is called The Oprimo Conspiracy, AI's Covenant with Babylon.
Who's this beautiful lady with the hijab around her face?
Yeah, and the crazy eyes, right? The orange eyes.
Yeah, she has some wild-looking eyes.
Her name is Becky, Rebecca, Becky for short. She's one of the main characters in the book, and she is the one who is going to be an intermediary in terms of how you get the message from the throne room of God down to the earth. And so as the book opens up with the seals and Jesus opening the seals, she's going to be the one to sort of let... How do the people of the earth understand what's going on as the last 7 years approach and start? So she's the intermediary. The reflection that's in her eyes is not her eye color. She would have distinct colors when people know my research, but the color is a reflection of a flame or an orange color.
Okay.
And so she's reflecting the flame of the Holy Spirit who is guiding her and helping her. And she is one of 2 flames that we cover in the book, which is rather unique for Christians because we look at it from a perspective that everything that is talked about in the Bible, the spurious forces are going to counterfeit. So there's going to be 2 flames. There's going to be a holy flame and a counterfeit flame from the polytheist side. And so they'll be competing as they compete through the visible ones that are on the earth. So it's quite a concept, and we wrap all of the characters in with bloodlines and history that go back into prehistory, and we place them, particularly the spurious side or the polytheist side, we place them into not just genses and bloodlines, but into secret societies that they're representing as they're working together.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a completely different take.
Okay.
And what we want to do is create an interesting novel to give people a better understanding, because if you think about how the end time comes about from whether or not it's a monotheist perspective or a polytheist perspective.
It's like a phone book.
It is. The second book's slightly smaller. I only promised that it'd be a little bit smaller when I did book 2, which I did do. It's only 700 and some odd pages.
700 pages.
Yeah. So, and one of the premises of my research is that if one really wants to understand from a polytheist side or a monotheist side how the end time is going to come about, that's talked about in both belief systems all around the world and all of the religions around the world, you have to understand prehistory. Because it's following a cycle of time. No matter how you look at how it's described, it's a procession. It is the age of Aquarius with the water bearer starting in terms of the polytheist side with the destruction by fire. It's the end of the age as the Bible describes it, also destroyed by fire. The differences in the lenses as to how the religious aspects look at it differ from only that particular biases of the lens. So in other words, from multiple or pantheon of gods or a singular god, and nuanced in terms of how the outcome is played out. And depending on which side you are as a proponent, you're going to see that a little bit differently, but understand they're talking about the same events. And that's the point of my research, is that this is a common legacy, common history, and a common destiny that we're all going to go through, and we're going to see it through different lenses. And the more we learn about it is going to be key to helping us make our decisions, particularly as we get into the age of disclosure that's so popular on the internet today.
So what initially led you down this path and got you so interested in this stuff?
Yeah, this sounds like crazy stuff at first blush, and at that time it was even more crazy in terms of what my perspective would have been. And I got into it rather innocently. I was 20 or 21, and it was a Friday night, and I have a brother, and he brought over a friend, and we're deep into the beers. And one of them brings up, and I don't know which one, as my memory recalls at this point in time, but they started talking about things like the false prophet and Antichrist. And I thought they were just crazy. But it's beer night. So then one of them said, we have a challenge for you. And I said, well, what was the challenge? And they said, well, if you have enough courage, we have a book for you to read. And I thought, well, I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not going to back down. I have no idea what book it's going to be. And it certainly wasn't the book I thought it might be. And so it was a book called The Late Great Planet Earth by a fellow by the name of Hal Lindsey, who was a prophetic writer in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and just recently died. And so I read it, and I wasn't familiar with end-time prophecy, but it scared the socks off of me. So I wanted to verify whether or not what Hal was writing was accurate. Was he embellishing it?
Yeah.
Was there any truth to it? And I thought, even if there's 10% truth to it, I probably need to find a little bit more about it. But the only way you can verify it is you have to start reading the Bible. And that's not an easy read. And it was not easy for me to read. And I ended up getting a modern translation because the Baconian English just sort of made my mind go to mush and nothing was sinking in. Yeah. And I know, as I later understood, is I would need to understand other Bible translations if I'm going to communicate. So Christians like to communicate for the most part in the KJV, or the King James Version Bible. So you have to become fluent in terms of the translations of each, which is a fairly large task. But I decided I wanted to verify and understand and be able to communicate to people whether this was true or not. So I started reading the Bible, and I got hooked on it, and particularly all the prophecy narratives, and then all this other stuff about prehistory that I was not understanding, and I needed to, as I was going through my research, I was going to learn to make more notes about things. So what I would do is I would log each of the prophetic narratives, which I start with highlighters because I'm kind of a rube at that point in time, and you run out of colors. I get more colors, you run out of colors. So this is it wasn't before the age of computers, but they weren't very common when I started the research. And so I started to handwrite all of the different passages and the main points into files of the different prophecy narratives. And as you do that, you run across very quickly in Genesis 6 about something really crazy that I thought at the time, which was giants. But it resonated with me as well because I was also...
Genesis is the beginning, right?
Genesis 6 is at the beginning, the 6th chapter of the first book. Yeah. And I wasn't a Christian at this point in time. I had left Christianity. I was baptized, but I would become completely secular, evolution, all of it. But I was also a history and a mystery buff, and I read significant books about these topics when I was young. And I understood a lot of the mythologies, like the Greek mythology, like the Egyptian mythology, like the Sumerian mythology. And I understood there was a relationship here which was going on in Genesis 6 with other accounts that I was already aware of, but I was shocked the Bible is talking about this.
Right, and way after other accounts of it are recorded, right?
Well, technically, yes. But that comes from a dating which is accurate in terms of how people would label that, but not perhaps accurate in terms of how it comes about. So if you're looking at, for example, Sumerian accounts of the flood and the Epic of Gilgamesh, and that he's 2/3 God and 1/3 human, just as Enkidu is, and that he is created after the flood as sixth generation son of King Lugalbanda, and the fertility goddess Nin or Ninsun, depending on which translation that you're looking at. This is a post-diluvian creation of a giant that is also encapsulating, as you get further into the Epic of Gilgamesh and into the later tablets, the flood story. And the oldest copy we have of that on those stone ones is about 2150 BC, but you have partials that go back even further.
Okay.
Now, the Bible comes down to us in the time of Moses. So depending on when one is going to time when Moses comes, that's going to be somewhere from about 1450 down to 1200, depending on who's timing for that history that you're going to talk about.
The Bible?
No, Moses' account.
Oh, Moses' first account. Okay,
yeah, in terms of he was provided the first 5 books from God.
Right, I see what you're saying.
So the dating has to be older than that from the timing that Moses receives the first 5 books, which includes Genesis. And so, yes, you have a dating in the polytheist versions that are older. Is the story older? Likely not, because it's being provided at that time and it's telling the same event.
Okay, so we don't confuse people. Can you define what you're talking about when you say the polytheists?
A polytheist is somebody who believes in multiple gods. A monotheist believes in one God. Now, so
you're talking about Christianity.
I'm talking about Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Okay. But the monotheist aspects of Christianity, the monotheist aspects of Islam, the monotheist aspects of Judaism. Mm-hmm. What do I mean by that? So in Judaism, you have sort of the orthodox Judaic conservative belief system, and then you have the polytheist one, which is the Kabbalah, or the mystical side, or the Essenic side, one being Egyptian, one being Babylonian in its roots in terms of how it comes into Judaism. But that is worshiping a pantheon of gods, of angels that rebelled. So biblically, we understand these as angels and gods. They're understood as a pantheon of gods in the polytheist religions. And you're going to have groups of polytheist gods before the flood, after the flood, mm-hmm. and a hierarchy of those gods, just as you would have that in the Bible with the Saba, or the host of heaven, which is an army of angels. There's a loyal side and a disloyal side. And so we look at that from a polytheist lens as a typical dualism of good versus evil. Mm-hmm. But polytheism has a dualism that's macro and micro. Micro is good versus evil within the religion, so black magic, white magic. Mm-hmm. Good giants, evil giants. Mm-hmm. As we know today, white hats, black hats. But that type of imagery versus their macro, which raises their supreme God and goddess up to a level of being equal with the God of the Bible. And that there's this perpetual, ongoing battle between good and evil. Now, they're going to look at themselves as the good and the children of light, and the monotheists look at ourselves the same way. So, but in the polytheist perspective, that battle never ends. There's just more games going on. The image that they might put out there is Satan and God having a chess match. Mm. And when the chess match game ends, they start another one. It goes over and over and over. It never completely ends. In a monotheist version, you have that same history, the same players, but there is an end where evil disappears.
Got it. And when is that? And that's what you're talking. That's the
end of the
Revelation.
Age. Yeah, the end of the age, Revelation, end times, or the age of Aquarius, as we would understand.
I just started reading the Bible
language
for the first time, and I'm reading it backwards.
Yeah,
so I started with Revelation, and it sent me for a fucking spiral.
Well, it is something that is undescribable if people haven't read it, in terms of what it talks about, the imagery, And the thing that I've been educating Christians on since I came onto the public forum about 10 years ago now, probably closer to 11, is the Bible is the most preternatural book ever written.
The most what?
Preternatural.
What does that mean?
Supernatural.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, totally.
Yes.
Totally agree.
And we should not ever, as a Christian, walk away from that. The polytheists celebrate preternatural activity and supernatural activity. Mm-hmm. We should not be ashamed as to what the Bible describes, and we should be prepared to defend that.
Yeah, it sounds like, and Giorgiani told me that the dude who wrote Revelation was like tripping his balls off.
Well, this fellow, his name is John.
On an island.
Yeah. Well, he's from Patmos, and he is obviously a disciple. Some people think it's actually John, one of the original disciples of Jesus. He writes at about between 90 and 100 AD by historical sort of writings and settings versus other speculation that's out there. So it could be. We're not sure who John of Patmos is, but that he's at least an apostle. Possibly the disciple Jesus loved that people would also describe John as, who would be selected to be around for the end time, along with other disciples that Jesus promised that to. I have passages for people if they want to get a hold of me on that. But John is taken in vision to heaven. It's kind of like the Ezekiel vision that the alien mythos group likes to have in Ezekiel 1, 3, and 10, where the chariot of gods and that whole movement with the chariot of God that's in the book of Ezekiel. Yeah. And so he's taken to heaven, and he's going to be shown a vision by an angel that is the testimony of Jesus. So Jesus is providing this vision for John to write down for the end time.
And this is the whole story of the figure that shows up with the tongue of a sword and all this and tells him that he has to go talk to the 7 churches. And
well, yes, John, Jesus will be there, but it's going to be an angel that's going to be presenting the vision to him. So another angel, likely an archangel, as we would understand it, one like a Gabriel or a Michael. And I say that just deliberately where I have a EL little.
Yeah. Why do you say it like that?
Well, because in angelic names, they end with a Hebrew word, which is EL, which is defined as an angel or a god. And so if you have an angel that is in polytheism like Ariel, could be one that's loyal, could be one that's disloyal, but we don't have that name in the Bible. We only get 2 real names for the angels. Gabriel. There's 2 other ones like Raphael and Uriel in the Apocrypha, but that's not sort of standard canon, so that's why I limit it to that. But Ariel means lion of God or God's lion, right? Ariel would be like a god who has a face of a lion, just as a seraphim angel has the face of a serpent with 6 wings. And if that sounds familiar from a polytheist perspective, most of the pantheons are made up of dragon gods or serpent-faced gods, and other ones like cats or lions. So like Nergal out of the Sumerian pantheon is depicted as a lion's head in a human body. It would be coming out of the cherubim class, which has actually 4 different faces, and it would take a face of one when it made itself into a physical presence, because angels have a capability of turning from spirit into a physical presence. And we get that biblically in a number of chapters, but for the Christians that might be out there who are going to check me on it, just bear with me on this. Hebrews 13, where we're told to be kind to strangers, lest we come across an angel unaware. So they can be in a physical form and unknown. In the Sodom and Gomorrah narrative just before, Jehovah of the Elohim, Lord God as it is in the Bible, takes a physical body, and he goes with two angels that take a physical body. Abraham, whom they're going to meet, doesn't recognize them as preternatural beings, but as men, and then understands they're men, and they eat, drink, physically interact, and then those two angels go off to Sodom and Gomorrah afterwards, who they're recognized as angels as well, and they want to have sex with them for, depending on your perspective, what kind. Is it to produce more giants, or is it to have homosexual sex? Because we're not told exactly what the sex is, and an angel can take a form of a female or a male.
Yeah.
Just as you see the pantheon populated by male gods. Let's say I'll do a safe pantheon because there's one mother goddess that's got a terrorist name attached to it. So let's go.
What was that name?
I don't want to have it taken down or have YouTube restrict the
don't worry
views.
about it. It won't happen.
Well, it's the consort of Osiris. Okay.
Isis?
Yes. So, and so that would be a male god and a female goddess, and she would be understood as one of the queens of heaven. Those are offspring gods versus the parent gods.
Got it.
From a Christian perspective, we would know that as Baal and Anat after the flood, the main gods of the Ugaritic Texts that talks about the creation of the Rephaim after the flood. And the parent gods before the flood would be Ashtaroth and El, as an angel or a god, but that was the name of their chief god. Mm-hmm. Parent gods rule before the flood. Offspring gods rule after the flood. So Baal succeeds El. And those gods, the parent gods, were killed by the offspring gods. So you can't kill something that's immortal. So they go to a pit prison, as we understand that in the religious text, or the abyss prison that Revelation 9 is talking about, with beings that are released in the end time. These are also the parent gods, not only are there, but also the offspring gods who create giants and do the same violations again after the flood. They go there. But that doesn't mean they're not ruling the earth today. As I mentioned, these are armies of angels or gods, and they have rank and order. So as ones might be sent to the pit prison, other ones would move up to replace them, and they would rule from what is known in polytheism and monotheism as the Council of the Gods, who rule this earth until the end time is played out.
So this flood narrative, when do you think that this flood could have happened historically?
Well, I would say for the record, there's likely more than one flood.
Right.
But there's only one great flood.
Like the most recent one that these texts are talking about, probably talking about the same flood, right?
Yeah. So
and it's in so many different texts.
Well, that's the thing. Like with the giants, like with pyramids, like with so many other things, you have the same accounts. And in this case, the flood and the creation of the giants, that is in all religions all around the world. Mm-hmm. It's on all continents all around the world.
We also have figures that are described in correlation with this flood. Like we have Noah.
Yeah.
We have Quetzalcoatl.
Yeah.
And then we have, what is it, Enki or Enlil?
Yes, those are, you described two offspring gods and Noah.
Or was it Deucalion was the one?
Well, Deucalion is the Greek version.
Deucalion is the Greek version. Okay.
Yes. And Pyrrha is Deucalion's wife. Deucalion is not Noah. Deucalion would be more equivalent to Utnapishtim,
right?
The figure that Gilgamesh is talking about. Let me just sort of get this because it gets confusing for people who aren't familiar with the information. Deucalion is the son of Prometheus.
Yes, that's correct. The son of Prometheus.
And he's a god, right? And so Deucalion is a giant or a hero in the Greek or an earthly titan. Mm-hmm. This is the same story as Genesis 6, where the sons of God create giants or Nephilim, as they're said in plural, through human females. It's the same story. And so Deucalion and Pyrrha, with him being son of Prometheus, is a giant survival story versus a human survival story. Mm-hmm. Gilgamesh, as I said, is 2/3 god, 1/3 human. In Greek mythology, they're called demigods, which in the ancient term means the offspring of the gods and a human female. Mm-hmm. So just as Zeus after the flood creates Hercules from the female Alcmene, that's a post-diluvian giant versus an antediluvian giant. Antediluvian before the flood, post-Diluvian, after the flood for the terminology that I'm talking about here. And there's two different records, but you have to understand this important piece of prehistory to understand how the linear nature of history goes forward through the gods and the flood event, because it's a standard all around the world, right? So in the Epic of Gilgamesh, he's talking about Utnapishtim, who's 2/3 god and 1/3 human. He's the ultimate perfect giant, and all of his family are giants to survive the flood, to restart giants.
He's the Noah.
He's the Noah, but not a human Noah, a giant like Noah. So on the macro level,
and just to clarify, the ancient Greek Noah was Deucalion.
Yes,
right. And the story is Prometheus is the one that brought fire and technology to humankind. Zeus wanted to flood the earth, and essentially Prometheus was the one who wanted to save humanity from Zeus.
That would be a little bit exaggerating in terms of Prometheus' role, but he did provide knowledge that Zeus didn't want to have out. That would be accurate. Zeus is a offspring god. The god that would be before the flood would be Uranus or Kronos as the parent god, and Gaia would be the mother goddess. So Zeus inherits the mythos as the chief god of the Greeks after the flood. So it's kind of a retelling of the history through these gods. They inherit the position and the mythos. So there would be a separate, just on the stickler point, there would be a separate individual before the flood that would be providing the knowledge to humans. And biblically, you might look at that from the book of Enoch, which is outside the Bible. But Azazel, or Azazel, depending on how you want to pronounce that, is the one who is the scapegoat who provides most of the illicit knowledge from heaven to humankind. So you would look at that as the same type of story, but one seen from a polytheist lens versus a monotheist lens.
Okay. Yeah, I was always told that Prometheus was the one that tried to save humanity from the flood and tried to gave them technology.
Well, he's certainly providing them knowledge, right?
And he was the one that created humanity.
Well, no. Humanity is created is well before that. And again, depending on how you're understanding that through the lens of an offspring god or a parent god, it would be in the polytheist perspective is that the pantheon of gods would have created humans before the flood, right? And then some would survive. And again, they have stories all around the world how humans survive.
So he sent Deucalion, his son, to
restart the demigod race versus the human race.
Right.
Distinction. It's important to understand.
So he only wanted,
same event.
He didn't save humans.
No.
He just saved a few women to mate with?
Yeah. Well, no. I agreed to that a little bit too quickly.
Okay.
So so what he did was he allowed a female giant and a giant male to survive the flood.
A female? What do you mean giant? Do you mean giant as in the way we think about giants today? Just like big, tall?
Yeah, and even bigger and uglier and more scarier. Yes. So when we're talking about a giant, there are two classifications of them, actually three. We can get maybe down the road into the third grouping. And there's different kinds of offspring of the gods too, which is another distinct story. Before the flood, the giants are thought to be, and I don't go beyond this based on looking at reliefs and physical things that we can look back to try and triangulate how big they were. They're not bigger from an antediluvian before the flood than 20 to 40 feet tall. Some people would say as high as 400 feet or 600 feet, using the book of Enoch and saying it's a cubit versus another measurement called an ell, which is speculative. I don't rule it out that they could be that big, but we just don't have information that sort of triangulates up to be that size. So 20 to 40 feet tall would be a size of a antediluvian or before the flood. After the flood, the largest giant that's recorded is Gilgamesh in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and he's recorded as 11 cubits. And he's the son of King Lugalbanda, king of Uruk, and Josephus gives us an interesting little tidbit that giants were the royals. They were the rulers.
Josephus.
Yes, he's a Jewish historian who did that recording in the time of the destruction of Jerusalem so that the history of the Jews would not be lost. And he gives an accounting of the Bible.
Josephus living?
Yeah, he lived between 0 AD and 100 AD or so. Okay, in that general time frame.
Got it.
And he said that giants were to be measured on a royal cubit, which is 21 inches, versus 18 inches. Not a big difference.
Okay.
But if you're looking at 11 cubits with Gilgamesh, that would be 16 feet tall or 19 feet tall.
Okay.
Right? So he's going to be, as a royal cubit, 19 feet tall, and he's 4 cubits wide. That's 7 feet wide. This thing's a monster. In the Bible, we get Goliath.
This is in the Book of Enoch.
No.
Oh.
When you're talking about Gilgamesh?
This is in the Sumerian text.
When I was talking about Gilgamesh, that would be in the Sumerian text. And it's also in the Ugaritic text, which is not in Sumer. It's actually between Tyre on the Mediterranean coast and Mount Hermon in the north.
Are there any texts that aren't religious that talk about these giant people?
Well, you do have Josephus who talks about them, but he is a Pharisee, but he's recording the history.
Okay.
So the history is being recorded by the elite, which are mostly the religious class throughout history. So it's hard to separate the two.
Sure.
But they did use a technique called humorism in the Greeks, and it's how they would just extract the history out of the mythology, because everything before written history was done in an oral tradition, so it would be done in a narrative, right? So that's what they did.
Everyone was illiterate.
Yeah, so till about the time of Herodotus, who's kind of the first historian of record, everything are kind of fables, and it's really harder to know what the complete details are. But if you talk to the Greeks, it's still their history. They would be offended if you said it wasn't. But to what degree you have to be an adept of polytheism to pull that out. That's where they're taught how to decode things out of that language in terms of the imagery, locations, and allegories. So getting back to the size, we get a biblical giant with Goliath, which is more than 1,000 years after the flood in the biblical record. In the secular record, where they place the flood about 2950 to 3050 versus the biblical record of 2350, about 600 years difference. This is a long time after the flood.
The Younger Dryas?
Well, the Younger Dryas is more like 10,000 BC.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Okay.
29.
Yeah, we can get to those relationships down the road if you like.
Okay.
So when we have Goliath, that is that far after the flood, and he is still being recorded at 6 cubits in a span in the Bible, using a royal cubit, as Josephus guides us to, and the king of Gath, that I think Ashish replaces, because Goliath is killed in the Bible story by David. He is going to be 11 feet 3 inches tall, and he's called stout, so he's extremely wide as well, and or 8 feet 9 inches using a standard cubit. No matter how you get that, that's huge. Giants are thought, from a monotheist perspective, to have, for the most part, at least the giants in the covenant land versus outside the land, like Gilgamesh, are going to have a height to width ratio of 2 to 1. So very stocky. So biblically, in the King James Version, it uses the word stout to describe them, not fat, muscular. These are creations of war, ambidextrous, fast, hard to kill, ability to heal themselves, and monstrous, right? And so we have another record with King Og, who's called the last of the giants. Hebrew word there is Rephaim versus Nephilim. Rephaim being more giants described after the flood versus before the flood. So a distinction. And I think because they're smaller, because we don't get to the same size of 20 to 40 feet tall in post-Diluvian accounts. Orontes that the Greeks and the Romans recorded, and who the name Orontes River in Asia Minor is named after, he was the same size as Gilgamesh. So two recorded in records in multiple locations of the giant being of the same size. But with Og, we don't get his size, we get his bed. And it is 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide and made of iron because the weight would crush wood. So that's going to make him, as king of Ashtaroth and Edrei and Ugarit, king of Ugarit, with Og or Ug being in there for the first syllable of Arit, which is Hebrew or Semitic for a terrible one. So Og, the terrible one. Full term would be Kiriath Ug Arit, or city of Og, the terrible one, as you would translate that out of Old Semitic or Old Hebrew. Og is a king, so he's going to be measured on a royal cubit. And so that's going to make his bed about 16 feet long, just shy of it. And it's going to be 7 feet wide. So to fit into that bed, he's going to be 4 or 5 feet wide, and he's going to be 12 to 14 or 15 feet tall. That's the range you would have to go in there. And he's the last of the Rephaim, as he's recorded 3 times in the Old Testament. And so he's not as big as Gilgamesh. He's also not a dark-haired giant. He's a red-haired giant. He's a Rephaim versus a blonde-haired giant that would be more Anakim or a Malachim that would be recorded in the Bible. But a smaller giant nonetheless than the Gilgamesh or the dark-haired giants, of whom the Herculides bloodline would produce dark-haired giants as well. So Hercules typically described as a dark-haired giant, and because he's son of Zeus and Alcmene after the flood,
I didn't know Hercules was
giant.
a giant. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I heard that he wore a dress, but I didn't hear that he was a giant.
Well, we're just not told the hidden history. They kind of hide it. We're told he's a demigod. We're told he's a great hero with great powers. He almost becomes like a god in the afterlife in the accounting. But they understood their heroes, as they called them, were giants because they were demigods.
Do you believe Hercules was real?
Well, I believe
historical.
I have no reason not to believe it. I have giants being recorded all around the world, done in the same way as described, and we have a bloodline of the Herculides through the Zeus gens, which they call the Cretagens, of Herculides kings that ruled after the flood, whom royals take genealogies back to this day. So whether or not it's true or not, the people who believe they're descendants of the giants believe it. And what they do with that belief system is what we need to be concerned about. But from a Christian perspective, we get confirmation of these stories outside of the Bible, from within the Bible, to know this has to be real.
What confirmation do we get outside of the Bible? Of the stuff you're saying?
Well, King Og is a giant.
Who?
King Og is a giant. He's a Rephaim giant. Okay. Goliath is a giant, created in the same way as the Ugaritic Texts.
But I'm saying, like, where do we get that from outside of the Bible, extra biblically?
That these are giants.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go to Gilgamesh's description in the Epic of Gilgamesh. He's 19 feet tall.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, that's kind of self-explanatory, right?
Where else besides the Epic of Gilgamesh?
Ugaritic Texts he's recorded as 19 feet tall.
Okay.
In the Ugaritic text, Baal and the Baalim Council of Gods are going to create giants, Rephaim giants, described as giants by its definition.
Yeah.
They're also healers, which Rapha can also mean, and their disembodied spirits are also Rapha as well. 3 Rapha words in Hebrew and Semitic that the Ugaritic text was written in.
Yeah, a lot of these different ancient religious texts seem to corroborate each other with different figures. I know there's like 14 different figures of Moses. There's like 14 different versions of Moses. There's like leper versions of Moses.
Yeah.
The flood myth, the giants, and all that stuff. It's very interesting how, and even a lot of the ritualistic things that happen, like Easter. There's lots of different versions of ancient Easter before the real Easter, and a lot of the gods are the same.
Do you know why that is with Easter?
Somebody told me this, but I can't remember it.
So the mother goddess that I talked about for the parent god El is Ashtaroth. Ashtaroth is the source word for Easter. It's just a transliteration, or Astarte or Ishtart. They're all transliterations of the same name. So when we get Easter, that shows up in the King James Version Bible in Acts 12:4, that should not be there. It should be Passover, but it's been translated as Easter, and that's how we get the name for the Easter celebration. But it was a polytheist ritual before that.
Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah, there's lots of things that the pagans were doing that it seems like when they wrote the Bible or when they created Christianity, they kind of like borrowed from a lot of that stuff, condensed it into one thing.
Yeah, so when we're talking about corroboration, we're seeing the same stories done in the same way. It is inexplicable, mathematically not probable in any sort of way, and I'm being generous, that you could have these same antediluvian stories and post-diluvian stories all around the world.
It's very interesting.
We
have scientific evidence that there was some sort of a flood on this earth. You know, there's lots of geologists that talk about this stuff.
And that these cultures never communicated, but yet
they were all building pyramids.
They're all building from the same engineering knowledge to build the same types of buildings. They have the same story of how things come about on the earth. But
certainly very interesting.
Yeah, it's not possible. And when I say all continents, we don't know about Antarctica, but I'm willing to speculate that once we know what's down there in Antarctica, it's going to reconfirm everything else around the world, because that's the MO. That's the information that we get. The information we get has been held within the cultures and religions all around the world because they wanted it never forgotten so that we might take note.
Yeah, that's very interesting. My friend Jason Giorgiani believes that Atlantis was in Antarctica.
Yeah, well, some people believe it got there through some sort of surface shift.
Yeah.
But I will say this, we don't know where Atlantis is, although Plato gives the most accurate descriptions in Timaeus and Critias that places it out beyond the Pillars of Hercules, beyond Spain and Morocco for the general location.
Randall Carlson thinks
North
it's
America.
The Azores.
Could be the Azores as well, and we don't know whether or not the conflagration of events, of catastrophes, caused a crust shift to send it down there. We don't know that. But what we do know is that Atlantis is telling the same story. That's the flood story, but with additional catastrophes that come along with it, like the 3 stars of the Pleiades and other things. That's also we can make references to biblically. But the story told through the offspring gods is Poseidon is the god who, through Cleito, is going to create 10 demigod kings to rule over the 10 empires of Atlantis. And that these giants at first ruled judiciously, but then the human format starts to take over and makes them become evil. And then they start creating these wars. They're trying to take over the world. And so Atlantis is telling the same story as Genesis 6. And it's this catastrophe that comes along because the earth has been absolutely corrupted in ways that we can't yet imagine because we're just catching up to that technology today.
Right.
And so in the flood stories, the Hebrew word corrupted, which is shakath, which means to pervert, to ruin, to decay, to pollute, to destroy. and all flesh is corrupted, and everything on the earth, not the sea, but on the earth is corrupted. That's all the DNA. Everything.
Only on the earth.
All the genome.
It specifically says not in the sea, only on the earth?
Only on the earth.
Interesting.
And so that's what's going to be cleansed in these flood stories. And so when we're talking about corrupting all of the plant genomes, that's just not sexual copulation going on between humans and humans or gods and humans. That's implied technology, like the building of the pyramids or Machu Picchu or other things all around the world that we don't have the technology to do to this day. We cannot do it in a level of the same masonry. We cannot align it to the celestial, astronomical things encoded into it. We can't put the sacred geometry in it. We can't put all of the earth ratios. We can't even lift those stones into place yet. Mm-hmm. So they had a technology we're just catching up to when you combine that with the DNA manipulation and the genome manipulation. And now when we see science that is starting to catch up to the angelic technology delivered by the gods in polytheist religions around the world, by the fallen angels in the book of Enoch, we're just catching up to chimera technology that they've named after the Greek history of DNA manipulation and putting multiple parts on.
And we have foreign governments all over the world, including our own, illegally developing chimera virus weapons where they're literally creating, they're manipulating the DNA of the bubonic plague virus and combining it with other viruses, trying to combine things like rabies and make it to where it's transmissible through the air, not just by touch. And what, I'm talking about like viruses that are 100% death ratio, and genetically just modifying these killer viruses in the for the prospect of war and global domination. I mean, that's to me is more terrifying than nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons are pretty damn bad, but it's on a whole nother level how evil it is.
Yeah, and if you can do that, then what else can you do? And when we start looking at all of these chimera animals that are recorded, chimera beings in prehistory, that's where we have to sort of take up and take notice.
That's crazy that we're doing that now in labs, and that we're disguising them as vaccine research, but we're literally creating microscopic chimera bacteria weapons.
Yeah.
Like it's insane.
And you can take the ability to do DNA manipulation in 1,000 of different directions, some for good to get rid of diseases. But the knowledge is never inert. It's either going to be used for good or for evil. And we as a species have the MO of using it for evil.
Oh, yeah.
That gets to be the issue with advancing technology. Knowledge isn't evil. It's how it's used. Mm-hmm. And that's, again, something we want to be very, very aware of. And that not only could you have that DNA that is designed to kill you through biological weapons, it could be just designed to change you. And you will become corrupted. One of the sins of before the war. I make a case in some of the shows that I do that the technology was so powerful that they could destroy the earth by fire. And it's important to understand that the flood was brought, if that's the case, and I believe that's the case, and I'm going to throw a couple things out here for people to think about in a couple of minutes, is that God brings the flood to prevent the world being destroyed in wars and destroyed by fire that is reserved for the end time, as 2 Peter 3 records. Fire of destruction is reserved for the end time. And it has a whole bunch of...
You're trying to put out a fire?
No, he's putting out a fire with a flood, I suppose, and having a restart, but he doesn't want the earth destroyed by fire. That's reserved for the ordained times, the end time. And so in the polytheist Polychronicon, used by Gnostics and secret societies, so as their ancient oral tradition, a fellow by the name of Enoch, son of Cain, versus Enoch, son of Jared. Biblically, there's 2 Enochs. We need to keep that in mind. Enoch, son of Cain, is going to develop the knowledge he learns from Cain into 7 sacred sciences and then form the mystical religions. I call it Enochian mysticism. We would know it more worldwide as Zoroastrianism before the flood and also after the flood. And so this knowledge is going to be kept in secret because of their developing it into different sciences. So Enoch, son of Cain, splits them into the 7 sciences that we would recognize as the 7 liberal arts today. Okay, and then it merges with this knowledge from the gods. And so they know from the polytheist side that destruction is going to be coming in the time of Enoch. And they don't know whether it's going to be flood or fire, because both in polytheist and monotheist accounts, as I've been describing in the Bible of fire and flood, that's the same understanding in polytheism, that in times of, that's why I mentioned earlier, there could be earlier floods in an older sort of time period, that these happen in cycles. One is a destruction of flood, and then the next one will be a destruction by fire. For some reason, they weren't sure what was coming this time, so they decided that they would put all of the knowledge, and as it turns out, I think more accurately, it's more the location to all of the knowledge that was accumulated before the flood in a certain location, or multiple locations as you get other stories lending into that narrative. But the Gnostic Masonic tradition is that 2 pillars are created to show the location to where it's buried under the pyramid, the Great Pyramid. That's, again, in their tradition is built before the flood, not after the flood, as Egyptologist accountings are, but before the flood.
We have no way to prove exactly when it was built, right?
Well, we have a Stela of Marna, of Menes, Stela of Menes or Narma. They're both is called the same name. And we have that as a record. In the background with that parchment in Stela is the 52.5 degree Great Pyramid. That's dated to 3000 BC. So we have something that depicts it that's older than 23 to 2400.
Interesting.
When Khepra or Khufu, either or both, renovated it versus likely built it.
Interesting.
So yes, we do have some. It's meager, I agree, but again, we have these buildings that all of the people who live there say that they didn't build them anywhere in their history. Their people say it was built before their civilization was there. So they predate the civilizations that secular history would accredit them building it to without an explanation where or how they had the knowledge to do that, of course. So we do have that hidden history that's recorded around the world that we tend to, put over here because it's an out-of-place oopart, so to speak, out-of-place artifact. It doesn't fit the narrative, so we'll pretend it doesn't exist. So when we look at these 2 pillars that are going to show where this knowledge is buried, they build one that is designed to survive a destruction by fire, and one is designed to survive a flood. So obviously it's the one by destruction by flood that is found because Hermes, in their account, or Harmine is the name that they use, transliteration for Hermes, finds that and takes that, and this is not the biblical account, this is the Gnostic secret society account from the Polychronicon and the history of Freemasonry, takes this knowledge to Nimrod to build Babel Tower 100 years after the flood, and where the knowledge comes to build it, and that he is accredited as the first Grand Master of Masonry after the flood who writes the first Constitution. And he's developing the same religion that's given to him by Hermes as well, but the same knowledge. And biblically we're told about this tower that acting as one people in one language, anything they decide they want to do, they're going to be able to do. And so the tower is destroyed. So when we look at the accountings of the flood, we're getting accountings of technology we don't have yet today. What's really interesting is about the ziggurat, and understand ziggurat or tower and pyramid were understood as the same type of buildings in antiquity, used for the same purposes.
Interesting.
Yeah, so in the Akkadian version of Babel, they use the term Babalu with the ILU versus the EL. And ILU is the Akkadian, Mesopotamian transliteration of El, meaning a god. And so they translate that second syllable as God or gods. And Bab isn't, as in Babel, as we know as confusion of languages in Hebrew, isn't translated that way. Bab is translated as a portal or a stargate. So now you have a portal or a stargate of the gods as it's translated out of the Akkadian and Sumerian versions. You'd have a similar sort of translation at the Tower of Eridu, which is the Sumerian account of the Tower of Babel. And we have a tower that has the description of being built with mud bricks that could somehow go into heaven. Well, you cannot build mud bricks that can go interdimensionally into heaven where God lives. In polytheist accounts and in some apocrypha, you have Nimrod doing these speeches that if God ever gets out of line, and I'm using Jubilees and the Book of Yasher here for these accounts, and Josephus, he is saying if God ever gets out of line, he's going to go into heaven and kill him if he ever tries to bring another flood. He's rebelling, right? And so he's either a madman or there's something more going on here. And pyramids and ziggurats were thought to be built as places on great energy lines, where power was funneled into for a purpose that we still don't understand. We could speculate 1,000 different ways, but this understanding of a portal now says interdimensional technology. So Nimrod is understood from a monotheist perspective as an Antichrist archetype who introduces a universal Babel religion, a polytheist religion that's Zoroastrianism or Enochian mysticism from before the flood. He's going to do what Antichrist is prophesied to do in Daniel 8:10, to go into heaven in the time of Revelation 12, same time frame on these as you link up the topology there, as the war in heaven in Revelation 12. He's going to go with Satan into heaven, and he's going to throw down some of the starry host and trample on them. That's what Nimrod is trying to do, which is why he's an Antichrist archetype.
Right.
And if you have that ability, you could go into another dimension, which is we would understand as the other world. We would understand it as Hades. We would understand that as Sheol. We would understand that as Argata. We would understand that of 1,000 different names all around the world for the same places and all religions all around the world where the pit prison is recorded. Where the fallen angels and the worst of the giants were sent to for doing horrible things to humankind. So he is introducing this religion of the fallen angels. He's adopting a religion where the Rephaim, who he is gaining his reputation against, as the Septuagint describes Nimrod gaining his reputation against the giants after the flood. He's introducing that religion, and the Rephaim giants are created by the Baalim Council in the Ugaritic Texts. Okay, this is the same council of gods that rules the world. Zeus is the same as Osiris, as is Baal is the same god, as Anki is the same god. It's just a different name for the same pantheon in a different civilization. Okay? And they have the same positions, do the same things. And if you understand that, then you, again, are attaining an ability to understand our history a little bit better, or where we're going. So with this understanding, then, I talked about the parent gods being killed and sent to a pit prison. Biblically, they're sent there for violating the laws of creation, for creating the giants and other violations against the Holy Spirit, altering physical life, like DNA manipulation. Okay? They are sent to the pit prison for that. They're not killed. They're going to be dealt with in the end time that we also talked about earlier, that Revelation is talking about. These are the ones that come out in Revelation 9. After the flood, the parent gods take over. They just move right up. Baal is living before the flood, yes, but he's not chief god. El is. Osiris isn't the chief god before the flood. Ra is, or Amun, but Osiris steps up after the flood. And they produce giants and do the same crimes as what was done before the flood. So we get that recorded biblically in Jude 1:6, 1 Peter 3, and 2 Peter 2. Same crimes after the flood by fallen angels, and talking about the pit prison. Now, the pit prison is talked about in all religions around the world. We know it as Tartarus.
The pit prison?
The pit prison, the abyss prison, the Tartarus prison.
Okay.
In Greek mythology. To give one sort of example, in the Gnostic Gospel, the Pistis of Sophia actually shows these 12 archons with different heads, like bears, like lions, like eagles, like dragons, like serpents, and more, like apes, of these 12 archons before the flood that committed the same crimes. And I'm telling you that Baal, for example, of the Ugaritic Texts, disappears. He's killed. Zeus disappears. They committed the same crime. Zeus created giants. Baal created giants. Enki created giants. All of the ones who did the same crimes in the same way as the parent gods, they go to the pit prison as well. They're not killed like Baal is said to be killed. They're supernatural beings. They cannot be killed. If they can be killed, only the God Most High could do that.
Right.
Right? So they're sent to the pit prison. And so Nimrod is introducing that religion to all of humanity 100 years after the flood, which is why the flood was brought, and is developing that same knowledge. And so you have the dispersion. So when we look at the stories that we're being told about, is there's this constant history that gives a larger context to the story if we let it be told. And it's a warning to us that we are going to go through the same cycle as what has been going on before. It's
a pattern in history.
It is. And biblically, in Ecclesiastes 1, it said, nothing is new under the sun. What was will be again. And the understanding of this only brings grief and sorrow. So when Jesus said it's going to be like the days of Noah, and then in the Luke account, he says it's going to be like the days of Noah and Lot at Sodom and Gomorrah, at the creation site of giants, according to the Gnostics, after the flood, we should stand up and take notice that if the end time is going to be like the days of Noah, we better learn more about what happened in prehistory if we want to understand what's about to come upon us.
We have such a blurry picture of the past, and we all just rely on these ancient texts. And I've talked to so many scholars and historians of different religions and different languages, and they all have different takes. They all disagree on everything about what the past is, and that's because we're all relying on this two-dimensional history. Like we don't have all kinds of science. We don't have like archaeology. We don't have stuff to corroborate. It's not interdisciplinary, right? We take these texts and then we rely on the human mind to tell a story and paint a narrative of the past. And everyone has their own flavor of the past.
And I think the value of understanding the global history is we can put the common denominators together and say, that makes sense, that is the same details in all those disparate accounts. There has to be truth there. At least a certain amount of truth, whatever level one wants to accept on that. But those are common denominators. And you can't explain that rationally, that those common denominators ought to be there. And they warn about the same future. Polytheist history has the same end time with the destruction by fire. And we might know that with the Vedas and the Upanishads of India, for one sort of polytheist example, where they have Shiva, the famous destroyer god. This is a destroyer god that has the ability to incarnate like Vishnu does. Vishnu was the one who incarnated into Buddha to provide knowledge to start the Buddhist religion. And in the sort of global conflation of the religions, Buddha is one of these individuals that are sent on the way, as they call it, to help us evolve into godhood. Right? So he receives this knowledge. This is not possession. This is the avatara effect. the avatar is the god, the receiver, the human who already has a spirit host in their soul and their body, receives this incarnation of this supernatural being who's going to provide help. It's different than demon possession, which isn't symbiotic and by a lower level of being.
Right.
Okay, it's different. It's distinct.
Okay.
That's my point there. Shiva does the same thing. Shiva comes in the end time, at the end of these set periods of celestial procession, to destroy the earth by fire, which started in 2012, according to the polytheist celestial procession with the age of the water bearer, where there's destruction of fire sometime within over 2,000 years, as one of those sort of periods of time is. So we're not sure from a polytheist side when, but in that sort of period of time. And in that period of time, when Shiva comes to destroy the world by fire, Shiva incarnates into a being that would be known as a Messiah type of figure from a polytheist perspective. And so Shiva is recorded in those religious records of avataring at least 12 times. I think Vishnu's 18, if my memory serves me right, but I'm in the zone. And Shiva's coming back in the end time. Well, who is Shiva? This is the god that is being associated. So who is Shiva? Shiva is the god being associated with CERN today.
Oh, yeah, that's
right?
wild.
With quantum mechanics that can go interdimensionally. With AI, so you can search multiple locations. So they're doing something interdimensionally. Just let me leave that hang out there. Shiva is the one they're doing these dances to. Shiva is also a creator god. Shiva creates a world it destroys by fire, and then creates a new world to restart.
Yeah.
So we understand this as in the Sanskrit version that I provided of the Zoroastrianism versus the Avesta version. So Sanskrit from the Indus Valley, started by the Proto-Indo-European Aryans, Iranians, giants. I know I'm moving quickly here. Versus the Avesta version in Persia, which would not call this god as we understand Shiva as Shiva, is called Mitra or Mithra.
Right.
And Mithra is a god of Zoroastrianism.
Right.
Mitra, M-I-T-R-A, without the H. H is kind of introduced into many languages behind a T as an evolution of the languages. So Mitra is understood in all of the Proto-Indo-European languages, just as CERN is. It'll come back to CERN. And so Mitra is the equivalent of Shiva. Mitra is a god who comes back in the end time as an avatar effect, who is going to incarnate into the polytheist Messiah, which we know as Lord Maitreya. Maitreya is a transliteration of Mitra. Mithra is the same religion that was in the time of Rome, at the time of the formation of Christianity. And with Constantine, Mithra is the main religion that's going to be sort of merged into Christianity with a lot of its imagery that forms the Roman Church as we sort of understand it. And that's a political move by Constantine to unite the empire. So we should understand it in those sort of terms. So as we look at Mitra, he is an individual that is coming back in the end time to do the same thing as Shiva. Now, biblically, we have a connection here with Azazel. Azazel is the scapegoat angel, leader of the watchers in the book of Enoch.
Okay.
We get the word Babel, we get the word Azazel in the Bible once. It's not always translated as Azazel. In the King James Version, a second goat is sacrificed on the Day of Atonement. First goat for the sins of Israel. The second goat, we're not really told what that is, and he's sacrificed differently and sent into the wilderness.
Right.
Scapegoat is the Hebrew word Azazel there, for the sins of the world. Azazel was the chief god, chief lieutenant of Satan, leader of the host, as he's put into the pit prison for his crimes, because he's the one accredited with being the destroyer god of the antediluvian world, the one who provided most of the illicit knowledge, not all, the most important knowledge to the people that developed all of this technology. He's the one who provided the knowledge and the arts and the crafts of war and its weaponry and its application. So to a development, to a level that we're just
Satan,
getting to.
Or the other one?
Azazel. He's the lieutenant. Let's call him that. He's
the
like,
left hand?
Yeah, he's the chief of the seven. Mm-hmm. Seven is the typical, like the 7 days of the week are named after the gods out of 3 different pantheons, Latin, Greek, and Norse. Okay, these are the 7 wandering stars as we know biblically. These are the 7 major ones, right? He is the leader of the 7 Satans in the book of Enoch. And he's the one that is entitled as the destroyer of the world, that we see as Apollyon and Abaddon as the one who comes out of the pit prison in the end time. So bear with me just a little bit longer. I like to tell stories and try and show some veracity to the things and not just your talking head. So roll this forward to secret societies and the Knights Templar. They are going to be disbanded in 1307, and they are accused of worshiping a god named Baphomet.
Yep.
So that is a colloquial transliteration of Papa Mitra. Coming from the original Proto-Indo-European, Indo-Aryan Sanskrit language, Mitra's M-I-T-R-A, and Bapo, B-A-P, and understanding the H's are added through that evolution of the language that I talked about. They are worshiping Bapho-Mitra, meaning Father Mitra, just as Father Mitra is introduced to the father aspect in Christianity in the time of Constantine, as we talked about, and why the Catholic Church calls their priests fathers and wear black Mithra robes and things like that. And I'm not anti-Roman Catholic. I mean, we have this that has rolled through all Protestantism as well. I just understand the facts of what happened.
Right.
So they're worshiping Bapho-Mitra, but in the secret societies, they worship Azazel as his name. And in fact, at Rosslyn Chapel, built by the adepts who founded the Templars, and in this case, the Sinclairs, or the St. Clairs of the Rollo bloodline from Odin, they're going to build Rosslyn Chapel as a taciturn imagery of their history in stone. And in there, they're going to have this angel that's hung upside down in a form of an S or a Z, because the Z could be an S or a Z as it's transliterated into different languages, with these pearls of wisdom, which is an allegory for the ancient archives of the Masons, which is an allegory of the Prometheus knowledge. It's this illicit knowledge that was provided from heaven that they're worshiping. And now you start to see the connections of the same gods again, now with the leader of the Watchers as a specific individual who is going to be coming back in the end time to incarnate into Antichrist.
So they're worshiping Prometheus?
In the allegorical sense, they are there. And I'll explain that.
Okay.
So in the secret societies, they'll use Freemasonry as a modern version of one of the offshoot organizations after the fall of the Knights Templar.
I don't understand the big hubbubaloo about Freemasons. They seem just like normal everyday people who are part of a club. Like, why are people so fascinated by the Freemasons?
I'll come back to that in just a second. So in there, they're going to worship an allegory trinity. And we understand that. I'll leave out the mother goddess name, just to be safe. They're
you
going
can
to
say it. It's okay.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yeah.
I just don't want.
No, you won't get us in trouble. Don't worry.
Okay. Well,
we said way worse.
It's the name of a terrorist group, and anytime I say it,
yeah, we can say it. It's
okay.
Fine. We say ISIS all the time here.
You don't get the same viewership out of YouTube as all. So if you're
we will. Okay. They've given up on us.
Oh, they have. Terrific. So they use as their trinity, as their allegory, Isis, Osiris, and Horus being the sun. Horus is that imagery that we see with Mary and the baby Jesus. That's the Egyptian imagery that's been embedded into Christianity. And that they are allegories for the original ones, because these are offspring gods. They're not even an allegory for the parent gods. This is for the original. This is for the original as you would know it in Gnosticism as Sophia and as Satan, or this nebulous life force, as the Gnostics like to refer to him as.
Uh-huh.
And so this is the absolute two chief gods and their offspring, who becomes like Jesus in that sort of imagery. So in the tripartite nature in Christianity, you have the understanding of El Elyon, or El Shaddai. Elohim in the plural, used for him in particular, is the Father, or Abba, as Jesus called him in the Bible. And you have Ruach of the Elohim, or Pneuma in the Greek, which is Ruach as in the Holy Spirit, or the Spirit of God in Genesis 1. Sorry, I have imageries that are going through my head as I speak, so my hands start to move. So that's the Spirit of God. And then you have Jehovah of the Elohim, who is going to become flesh in Jesus. And we get that known as the Word of God in the Bible, which is the Logos, or Word, of the God Theos in Greek. It's the same individual. He becomes, as the Word, the one who created God when God commands him to do so, creates all things. He's the Son. So you have a polytheist, tripartite nature, also recorded in the subcontinent of India's religions, also in the Bible. And you also have these two individuals clashing in the end time. And if you now look at what's going on with Islam through the Hadiths, not the Qur'an, I want to make that as a significant distinction here. There are different Hadiths that are used within different sections, like the Shia or the Sunni or the polytheist Sufis, which are associated with the Templars, by the way.
Interesting.
They're going to use a different hadith to describe their Makta that's going to come in the end time. And actually the Makta is going to fight against the other Makta. And then that one's going to be the one who succeeds to become that sort of leader. So I just want to make sort of the understanding that this is not an unknown, isolated accounting of what we want to be aware of. And there's going to be many antichrists. But I wanted to get back to what you had said. Well, what's so special about the secret societies and Freemasonry?
No, not necessarily. So, okay. I've met a lot of people who are Freemasons. They call themselves Freemasons.
Yes.
I don't think they're part of any secret societies. I think they're just trying, they're just, they think it'd be cool to be like, I can call myself a Freemason. You know what I mean? Like,
what, did you ask them what level they were at?
None of them. I don't think any of them were 33 degree. I had one guy on here who was a Templar. Very high level Templar. Again, very nice guy. Writes books, does podcasts. I don't think he was sacrificing any babies or kissing the head of Baphomet. He did say he knew where the bones of Christ were buried, and he also said that he knows exactly where the Ark of the Covenant is.
And in their lore, they definitely make clear they have those types of things that they're going to make available in the end time, or at the right time. So when we look at...
Did you know they had the head of Mary, the skull of Mary, in a museum?
So what?
Do you think that's real?
Hard to know. Hard to track the history of that.
It's in this crazy, like, space helmet looking thing. It's very terrifying.
And the ossuary that they would have, the so-called bones of Jesus that they make the claim for, it's in the form of two bones like this, as you put it in the ossuary, and the head on top. If that sounds familiar, that's the Templar flag of the skull and crossbones on the pirate ships, which was their fleet after the taking down of the Templars. The Navy escaped, and the Skull of Bones Society in the Ivy Leagues in the U.S., which is an Illuminati group.
The skull and crossbones that are on traditional pirate flags came from that?
That's their symbol.
From Jesus's bones?
They would spit on the bones, or the spit on the cross, as image of not accepting Jesus as the Messiah.
The Templars.
Right. They believe that they have history and genealogies that proves Jesus didn't die on the cross.
Really?
Yes. And that...
What do they think happened to him?
Well, they believe a fellow by the name of Joseph of Arimathea took him down from the cross before he died and then had him nursed back to health. And he had previously married. I document all of this in book 1 on what they plan to do for the end time on this, and they say they have proof to do it. We'll see what they come out with, if they actually do. But he's taken to Mary Magdalene, who they said was married at Bethany in their accountings, where Mary anoints Jesus at Bethany. They said that's where the marriage took place. And then he has 3 children with Mary after the crucifixion because he doesn't die. And they moved to southern France, where the Holy Blood and Holy Grail detective work of the 80s sort of comes into play. There are people are familiar with that.
This?
Well, they believe because they say they have records on this.
But no one's ever seen the records?
Well, just within the adept group.
We have records, but you guys aren't initiated.
Yeah, that's what adepts do.
Right.
And I'll try and get there.
Right. Like Scientology. We'll show you. We'll teach you about Xenu once you climb the ladder.
Same concept.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And so one son survives to produce children. And that fellow, his name is Josephus, and he's taken by Joseph of Arimathea to Glastonbury as the Grail child. So the Grail is an allegory for the bloodline. There's a Song Real and Song Grail versus Song Graal, which is a chalice. It's Song Grail and Song Real, which is royal blood and royal bloodline. Okay. So he's going to marry into the Camelot dynasties. Right? With that bloodline of Mary Magdalene and Jesus, that through Aragon is going to marry into Amenabad of the Merovingian dynasty. And they're going to track that genealogy all the way through into the 3 major funders and adepts of the Knights Templar with the founding, and I'll name them as Godfrey de Bouillon, which people are familiar with, Henri de Payon, and the other one would be the folk of Anjou. And they're all Anjous out of the Lorraine region of France. And they're going to be the ones who take Jerusalem and set up the Kings of Jerusalem title. And the folk of Anjou is going to be the first official king of Jerusalem in 1118 when he's crowned. Baldwin is king, but only for a year. He dies. His brother takes over, but isn't officially crowned with this title. But they're Anjou, and they're tracking the bloodline of Jesus through that bloodline, through the Anjou, and then an intermarriage into other royal families. And they're also going to graft in there other Davidic bloodlines as well as Benjamite bloodlines. And that's important to them through the Benjamite, through Mary Magdalene in their records, and through Benjamites that migrate up the Danube River and then into the Sacambian Franks, where the Merovingians come from, to track that other biblical bloodline, because it's important as it comes to Jerusalem, because in the book of Joshua, he is going to give Jerusalem to the Benjamites as their inheritance. So they've got scion bloodlines that go back to David, to Jesus, and to King Saul. And as part of the King of Jerusalem title that Antichrist will declare through that right of inheritance when he crowns himself in the temple in the end time.
Got it.
So they've been sort of planning all of that. So as we understand this all coming together through why it's important to understand the connection between Freemasonry and Masonry and Royals and Giants, is because to become an adept, you have to be of the bloodlines of the Genses.
Right.
So if you're a Freemason, that's below 32nd degree in the Scottish Rite, you know nothing. You're still considered, like us, mundane.
Got it.
Not worthy. You have to be an adept at 33rd degree to have every preconceived understanding you ever had overturned, kind of like what they're preparing us for with the revelations coming out of Antarctica, or with the alien disclosures.
Yeah, I'm not buying it.
Yeah, same sort of
Sounds like a
concept
scam.
here. Yeah, all the same language. And if the old system is the 3rd degree, so Scottish Rite, 33rd degree, split up 11 ways from the original old 3rd degree first level adept. We don't know how many levels they are, but originally, if they ever gave out the secrets at the adept level, you'd be punished by death.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of secrets have come out, and they don't tend to look fondly of it, but I can't say today they're still killing
Well, it's interesting
people.
all the founding fathers of America were Freemasons, you know.
It's no coincidence.
Yeah.
I mean, the U.S. was created to bring about the end time. Right? And
By who? They thought this? They said, we're going to create the U.S. to bring about the end time.
yeah, they knew about the Templars and the Sinclairs and Freemasonry knew about North America before it was discovered. Why? Because the adepts of the Templar army running the ships, like the commanders, right? They were already traveling there. And in Scotland, with the Sinclairs, they have a tradition after the fall of the Templars of going over to Oak Island, for example. Okay, so they already knew about that. And in their tradition, Columbus receives the knowledge on how to get to the New World using the winds and the time of the year to get there and back. And on the Santa Maria, he threw the Templar flag. That's where he got his knowledge from.
Right.
So they knew about that.
Yeah.
And as they move forward, I don't know whether the Templar that you were talking to, but you ever talk to another Templar, ask them where they moved all of the treasures from Oak Island to. If he tells you the truth, he's likely going to tell you, we made treaties with the bloodline chiefs of all the First Nations, or the important ones, but enough where you could take all of these treasures and knowledge and put them on reserves beyond the oversight of a secular government.
Interesting.
That's where they say the knowledge that you're referring to. Do they have records on it? Where would it be? It's in safe places. And they had to continually move that knowledge and move it to separate locations in fear of it being discovered.
Right.
Whether that's true or not, that's only what a Templar that I listened to told me.
Okay. All right. So explain to me how you came up with this theory or idea that you lay out in your book, that you believe that there are modern day descendants of the Nephilim.
Yeah, well,
that are controlling and engineering society.
Yeah. So we have King Charles III. They tell you this. You just don't understand the language they're talking in.
Okay.
So when he was crowned king, he was crowned king twice. Right? After Queen Elizabeth dies in the fall, and then usually they like to do their official inheritance rite in June. That's the month they would like to do it. When they started the Kings of Heaven in Jerusalem, same thing. Official was this pageantry, not at the Priory of Sion on Mount Hermon, but in Bethlehem at the Notre Dame Cathedral is where they would crown their Kings of Jerusalem at. So sometime after. So always official, and then the ritual rite, because it's a polytheist. And they swear to a god and have ever since the flood. And we presume this is an antediluvian rite because it's an ancient rite of all of the giant kings going before them. And they swear their oath to a specific god. So when King Charles swore an oath, he may not have been swearing to the God of the Bible as most people think. He will swear an oath back to his genealogical celestial mafia godfather. That's what I like to call him. I don't know which one it is because he has
say that one more time.
It's a term and a half.
His genealogical celestial what?
Mafia godfather.
Mafia godfather?
Yes.
Okay.
Polytheism is an initiatory organization.
Polytheism is an initiatory organization?
Yeah, and religion. Become an adept in polytheism,
I thought polytheism just meant you don't subscribe to one exclusive god.
Yeah, you worship multiple gods, but it's an organized religion.
So it's a monolith?
No. They have multiple gods that they worship.
Right, but you're making it sound like it's one big organization called like the way you speak about it. You say it's like a big organization called polytheism.
It's like understanding Christianity and all the different denominations. So the religion of the Druids is the same as the religion of Egypt. The religion of Egypt is the same religion as Greece, as the same religion of Sumer, as the same religion. They just have different names for the gods and some different sort of local additions to the rituals, but the core adept rituals are all the same. And they understand them as the same. And in Freemasonry, and Masonry more accurately at the adept level, they recognize the priests and the gods as all being the same. The Druid priests are the same as the Greek philosophers in terms of practicing a polytheist religion to the pantheon of gods, as the same as the Brahmins, as the same as the Egyptian priests. They are the same organizational type, a different group, but worshiping the same root religion that goes back to Enoch, son of Cain. Freemasonry honors Enoch, son of Cain, as their prime patriarch.
What was the religion of some of like the biggest intellects in Greek antiquity, like Plato and Socrates and all these people?
Sophists.
Socrates was killed for bringing in new gods, right?
Yeah. You would have rival different names. They're the same gods. Osiris is the same as Zeus, right? And if you have another name for Zeus within Macedon or somewhere else, it's still the same god if he's the chief god.
So all of these ancient Greek philosophers and all these people that, you know, the biggest intellects in human history were polytheists.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seems like a good thing.
Yeah.
Seems like a great thing.
Look at the pan god as an example. You know, you have Bacchus, you have Innes, you have multiple names.
Bacchus is the god of wine and partying, right?
Yeah, which, again, is a typical aspect of a satyr god, a satyr god, a goat god, right? That's what Pan is. That's what Baphomet is described as. That's what Azazel is described as.
I thought Baphomet was a cow or a bull.
Horned.
Okay.
Horned, but in a goat sense. And a bull cult is part of polytheism, as the sun cult is. Different imagery with a different meaning. So you have like Odin as a horn god. You have Cernunnos as a horn god in the Druidians, also known as Hern. You also have Bacchus, that's a horn god in the Latin pantheon, the Proto-Latin Etruscan, Proto-Indo-European. That name would be C-E-R-N, pronounced Cern or Kern. And it comes directly from Proto-Indo-European languages, pronounced as C-E-R-N, Cern, or K-E-R-N, Kern, just as it comes down as Keren or Kern in Hebrew for horns. And so when it's used in the plural, as in Ashtaroth Karnaim, one of the cities that Og looked at, it's the two horns of Ashtaroth as part of the bull cult, versus the horns of a ram, which would be a Ares type of god, a god of war, versus a satyr god. There's different horn gods in polytheism.
Right.
But the satyr god is a very important one because it unites who Azazel is to Cern, to Mitra. And now you start to see all of the connections across all of these cultures. Same gods, same religion. And when you take it back to the old languages, you can get them all back to the same gods.
What do you know about Yahwism?
Well, there's two versions of Yahweh. There's a polytheist version and there's a monotheist version. So typically from a polytheist version, and particularly out of the Canaanite history, where El is the parent god before the flood, Baal is the offspring god after the flood, you have Yahweh as an association of El in the Canaanite pantheon. Okay. And he is typically understood in Gnosticism as the son, and as the Royals will describe him, Jesus, in their belief system, is an offspring of Lucifer, or Satan, as we would call him.
Well, Jesus did call himself the morning star, right?
Yes, versus the son of the morning, and there's a distinction here. So where you're getting a term where it gets conflated by the polytheists is Isaiah 14:12, where it says...
When you say it gets conflated by the polytheists, are you talking about modern-day polytheists?
Yes, and throughout history.
Okay. What would you consider a modern? Because I've never heard anyone call
Gnostics.
themselves a modern day polytheist.
Gnostics, New Age.
A Gnostic or a New Age, like a
Hinduism.
Oh, Hinduism.
Yeah, Sufism.
Okay.
Okay, polytheist religions.
Okay. I've never met anybody who declared themselves as a polytheist.
Well, I do it because it's a non-threatening term. People have connotations to other terms. Polytheist just means multiple gods.
Right.
Versus monotheist, which is a single god.
Okay. And you think the polytheist is bad?
Oh, it's another religion. I believe in monotheism. I believe in Jesus of the Bible and God of the Bible.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not here to convert anybody. I'm just trying. All I try and do is I try and provide people information to understand the world we live in and where we're going. So you understand why you believe. I hope you'll give the Bible a look. I hope people convert to Christianity. But everybody has free will and free choice. It's for us to learn.
But do we have free will? If you believe in an all-omnipotent and an all-omniscient God, not to go off on a tangent, but if you believe in this God who knows everything that's going to happen in the future, do human beings have free will?
Yes.
How?
Because he's greater than time. He knows everything. He knows through free choice how things are going to play out.
That means the future's already written, though.
No, we choose it as we go. But because he understands everything, he knows ultimately it ends up here. But along the way, we get a chance to choose to leave our name in the book of life or have it blotted out from a Christian perspective. Our choice.
Okay.
Okay, so we do have free will. Angels had free will. They were created immortal. We were created not immortal. We're mortal. We have the ability to choose immortality.
Yeah, I've talked to many scholars. The reason I ask you is because I've talked to many religious scholars who subscribe to the very religion that they've dedicated their studies to. Right. So they're academics, and they're studying. They're doing a science, by studying and analyzing ancient languages, ancient texts, and all this kind of stuff, and trying to figure out the reality of the past.
Yeah.
And simultaneously, they believe in this stuff with every fiber of their being. So for me, it seems like there's this built-in bias when you're doing that, right?
And you have to be aware of your biases.
Right. And
we all will have a biases if you make a decision.
Right.
So weigh it out and know why you believe what you believe. That's my main sort of goal, and to help prepare Christians for what's coming, so that we can better understand it and not be deceived. Because ultimately, there's an ultimate choice in there. Everybody's going to have to choose if we're in the fig tree generation. So yes, God allows things to play out through free choice. He only intercedes to make sure enough time is permitted so that everybody whose name was written in that book of life has that opportunity. And everybody is given the same opportunity.
And why do you think God allows the devil to do? You believe in the devil, right? You believe in Satan?
I don't believe in him. I believe he's true.
But you believe the biblical version of Satan?
Yes, absolutely. He was the greatest being ever created.
Right under God, right?
Well, right under God, right under the Holy Spirit, or
highest level of angels.
Yes, because the Word of God created all the angels as well. It's Jesus. So below that, and he was actually high priest at one time. We know this because he wore 9 jewels. He was also described as the anointed cherubim in Ezekiel 28. And he was anointed cherubim who walked amongst the fiery stones where the seraphim are, the dragon angels, who are the ministers.
Right.
And so we know right from there we've got 3 different orders of angels that he has attributes of. Seraphim, cherubim, and some form of being that would be a high priest that Jesus will take over in eternity. We also know that he is an archangel.
Right.
From the New Testament. So that's another one of the 4 groups of watchers. And so we get many sort of descriptions. We don't know how many aspects are of Satan, but we know he is the most unique being, having those attributes of so many other
because he's
orders.
Perfect in every way, right?
He
knows everything.
In every way.
He has all knowledge at once. Like
he doesn't have all knowledge, no.
I thought, and from what I've read, I just read a whole book about Satan, and this is what I'm getting from that book. Is that he basically has all knowledge, all intellect that any human being could possibly have all at once. And when you think about evil, and when you think about people that do evil, in general, people are ignorant to things. They've been through trauma. There's been things that happen to them where they commit evil acts, not necessarily just for the point of committing an evil act. There's a whole history behind that to what led them there, right? They might be ignorant of what they're doing. The point about Satan is that he knows exactly what he's doing when he's choosing to defy God and do all this stuff. And one of the things that I was curious about is your take on why does God let him do these things, like afflict humanity with plague, with cancer, let babies die, let wars happen and all this stuff? Do you believe that that's because there's an ultimate good outcome that's going to happen from that? It's going to lead more people to Christ or something?
Okay. I'll try and keep it tight. That was a big question. So he knows a lot. He knows more than humans. He knows more than the disembodied spirits of the giants, the demons. He knows more than an angel class of angel. He knows more than the ones in the next two levels of angels. He knows more than the archangels. He does not know more than God. Right. He does not know as much as God. And one example of this on how we know it, and as it's given to us in the Bible, is that when Jesus became flesh, that if the archangels, and the rulers of this world, Satan, understood the resurrection or knew about the capability, this was an unknown thing that they did not know about, they would not have ensured Jesus was crucified. And if they had the ability to go back in time, they would change that. But they cannot. They did not know about that. They don't know everything, but they know lots.
Right.
And they know way more than we can fathom.
Right.
So they appear as all-powerful, but there's only one God Most High from a monotheist perspective. But even from a polytheist perspective, Satan would sit above with his counterpart, who's not with him right now because she's in the pit prison, I think, my speculation. We can go there if you want to go there, but sits above the council of the gods.
Now, isn't Satan... Go ahead.
This all started off with the morning star. So let's go back to the beginning and get that answer.
Well, this really all started with me asking you about the descendants of the Nephilim being here today, trying to engineer the end times. But we're all over the place.
So in Isaiah 14:12, that's Halel ben Shakar in the Hebrew, which means Halel, son of the morning. Notice that word El on Halel. That's one of the names for Satan.
Okay.
So when he's known in a seraphic form in the Talmud or in Jewish polytheism, his name would be Samael, as they call him. He has a different name for each of his attributes, we'll call it that way.
Okay.
So in the book of Enoch, the name is Gadrael, and you actually take that back to the Hebrew, that means God's wall or the wall of God. And starting with G, that is highlighted in Freemasonry, he's a cherubim in Eden, not in a serpent form, because that's what the Bible tells us. And that would be his cherubim name, if that's accurate, out of the book of Enoch. So we know he's very, very important, and he's called Halel, son of the morning there.
Who?
But he's not the morning star. The morning star is Venus that he's associated with. And the morning star is only a morning star for 6 months of the year.
Okay.
And then it's an evening star. So typically in a lot of the polytheist accounts like Greek, you might have two gods associated with that. So what the polytheists do, particularly the Gnostics and the Freemasons, they say, well, that's Jesus is the same as the son of the morning. Well, there's two different terms there. One is son of the morning, referring to one of the 7 wandering stars, and the other term is morning star.
So who is the Satan in the Greek version? Who's the Greek version of Satan?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And I would say he's not named in the Greek version.
Well, it's a different name, right? They choose a different name, but what would be the Greek equivalent?
I think what we get is we get the allegories for that nebulous life force. Understand, Gnosticism comes out of the Greek history. And we don't...
Can you define Gnosticism for people who might not know?
It's Greek gnosis for knowledge, and it's a knowledge religion. And Gnosticism is the parent religion of Theosophy. Which then created New Age. It is the religion that was around in the time of Jesus that Simon the Magus was a member of. And it tries to do what it tries to do in its greater sort of nature is bring back all of the different polytheist religions around the world into its home original sort of Zoroastrian or Enochian mysticism.
But
religion.
In general, isn't like Gnosticism like true knowing, like knowing intuitively something?
In an allegorical sense, they would teach you how to do that from the Gnostic language.
Okay.
Right? So again, a distinction out of that. But gnosis is understanding the knowledge. The knowledge is that lost knowledge that is been hidden from us that the Freemasons say that they're protecting.
Okay.
And they're trying to reestablish that time of Eden when they can bring that knowledge out again, or that time before the flood.
Okay.
Eden would be an allegory in that sort of sense. So, yeah, Gnosticism is a blanket term. I like to call it in Book 1 global Gnosticism, as they try and unite all of this religion into what we would know in the end time is what you read in Revelation 12 as the mother of Babylon, or the mother religion versus the daughters of the Babylon religion. Understanding Babylon, it takes its biblical Greek etymological root back to Hebrew, to Babel, as the source word for Babel, which is Babylon, both as the empire, the city, and as the future religion that's coming down the road. The daughters of religion in the Bible, as it talks about in the Old Testament, is this polytheist religion, but this denominational aspect of it that would rule over the first beast empire that's talked about in Christian prophecy, which would be Egypt, which would be the Egyptian religion. And then you have the Assyrian religion. Then you have the Babylon religion, the Persian religion, the Greek religion, the Roman religion, which would be all daughters of Babylon.
So who is the Greek version of Satan? Who would be the Greek equivalent?
I would say they don't really name one. We get Sophia, and I've looked through all the Gnostics. They have Sophia as the mother goddess. That's definitely the consort. And all we
I
get...
thought it was Prometheus.
Well, Prometheus is kind of like an offspring god, an allegory for another one. So...
Why do people say that Prometheus is equivalent
let me go back to the Egyptian analogy I didn't finish earlier with Osiris, Isis, and Horus.
Okay.
That is... Osiris in that application is an allegory, as the Freemasons would say. An allegory for another god.
Okay.
And then people might say, well, okay, would that then be Ra or Moon? No, Ra or Moon are parent gods before the flood, but an allegory for one other god. That's above the council of the gods, above the parent gods, above the offspring gods. So to that original three, it would be an allegory thereof.
Okay.
So you only get the allegory coming out of Gnosticism, but we do get Sophia.
Okay.
For some reason, we do get Sophia. I'm not here to defend why they don't name them and why you have parent gods and offspring gods as being an allegory for the chief god.
This is what it was. Prometheus is compared to Satan because they're both archetypical rebels who defy the supreme divine authority to bestow forbidden knowledge or power upon humanity. This parallel was famously explored in literary works like Lucifer and Prometheus Unbound.
And if you look on the knowledge, how you sort of link that back, understanding Prometheus is after the flood. He's an allegory of this mythos that continues. Satan is the one who is going to be working with the serpent being in Eden that's listed there with that knowledge of good and evil. So it's an allegory of Satan here.
That was a Giorgiani's book too, Prometheus Unbound.
And people will say that Satan is in Eden in a seraphic form. No, he's not. He's there biblically.
Interesting.
In his cherubic form. It's the serpent that deceives Adam and Eve. Eve first, and then Adam gets deceived through Eve. That's the Hebrew word, the Hebrew word there, Nahash, for the serpent.
Okay.
And Nahash has a source Hebrew word, also Nahash, N-A-C-H-A-S-H, and the C-H in this case is got that H sound for Nahash. Some people say Nakash, but technically Nahash. And the source word is for a sorcerer, an enchanter, a diviner, all words that are used for priests and priestesses of polytheism.
Okay.
So this is a high-level, walking, talking, intelligent being that's working with Satan to deceive Eve and Adam. It's not Satan that's punished. It's the Nahash that's punished, the serpent being. We don't know where this being comes from, this serpent being. In Genesis 3, he's called the beast of the field. He's not called an angel, a beast of the field. And then he's reduced to the snake-like imagery that we have today as the curse prophecy talks about, and the application of that. So when we look at day 6, we have beasts of the field that are created before humans are in day 6. We don't know how long a day 6 is. Back in 2 Peter 3, it says a day is like 1,000 years. Also said that in Psalms 90. So if a day is 1,000 years, this is a passage in 2 Peter 3 about the destruction by fire that was in the beginning. So it's also going back into prehistory with information. You could have a day being 1,000 years back then. So each of those days are 1,000 years, and we don't know what happened between Genesis 1:1 and 2 in terms of, did the earth become void and formless? Or was it created void and formless? You could translate that two different ways with the word was or became. But to understand this, we don't know where this intelligent creatures come from, other than we have a walking, talking, intelligent being that could be there for more than 1,000 years before the creation of male and female in day 6. That would be the prized beings of the rebellious angels who are being used to deceive and coached by Satan to deceive Eve. So when we look at how things are recorded in history from a polytheist perspective, understand the reflecting true history as that showed all the way back to the Garden of Eden, which shows a common history. And that the Garden of Eden, to at least a certain extent, was a real place.
Interesting. So you believe that there's people walking around today that believe that they have DNA that is shared with the Nephilim of these ancient texts.
So let's go back to King Charles.
Why do these people believe this?
It's where they fit in the cult of the royals. It's based on purity of bloodline and scioning or grafting in of other ennobled bloodlines. So King Charles, he's on record as saying that his genealogies that he has goes back to Vlad the Impaler. Dracula, the person that's used for Dracula, which is a Scythian ghost warrior. And Nephilim drank blood, and they have serpentine teeth with this Dracula-type individual. He is actually a noble Scythian, a noble Celt. He's got red hair. In the occult version of him, we usually see him with black hair, but he's got red hair in most of the traditions and hazel eyes and pale skin. And he was a royale. And he took his genealogies, that family takes their genealogies back to Draculesca, and I won't go through the whole minutiae of the genealogies, back to a tribe of Scythians called the Ugaritic. And that tribe takes their genealogies back in two parts. One goes back to Tamiel, which is Kezadea, as one of the names for Tamiel that's recorded in the Book of Enoch. But more importantly, from what we've been talking about, the Scythian Ugaritic tribe was one of the offshoot tribes of Hercules in the Herculidean royal bloodline of the Gog and Gyges bloodlines. Herculides, the
Pull
credit
that mic right in front of your mouth. There you go. Scoot that way a little bit.
Of the credit.
Scoot your body that way a little bit. There you go. Perfect.
The Credigens of the Zeus bloodline, as we talked about. So Hercules, who has his genealogy that goes back through to Alcmene as his female mother and Zeus. Now, King Charles has other genealogies that has to do with the Sinclairs and the Bruces that would go back to the Norse bloodline as well. They track these bloodlines and their genealogies as put on display by what King Charles has said about going back to Vlad the Impaler, and then how that family tracked their genealogies back into the mists of time. They all have these genealogies. Why? Because it's where they fit. And so they put these taciturn imageries in front of us that will reflect their genealogies. We would understand that of coats of arms.
Okay.
These coats of arms are taciturn imagery of their celestial mafia godfathers, fallen angels, the gods. So you might see dragons and serpents on a coat of arms. That's a seraphim. You might see a lion or an eagle or a bull. Those are three of the four faces of a cherubim when they take a form. So as you look at all of these sort of taciturn imageries, and there are different looks. So again, as I talked about these archons being talked about in the Gnostic Gospels and in the Pistis Sophia is the one that I named, but they have, through the different angelic orders, different faces: bears, apes. We even get a jackal that's talked about in the Bible that is named Nebaz, and they're called jackals as we get the description of them in Isaiah 34 and Isaiah 13. And there's a god that is being worshipped by Avim giants in the Mesopotamia region that we're worshiping two gods. One is Nergal, which is a lion-faced god, cherubim. And then the other one is named Nebaz. As you take that back to its Hebrew, it's a barking god. It's a dog face or a jackal face. Anubis is a jackal god. Anubis created multiple giant-like creatures that we would know as dog Nephilim or the dog mythos. So much so that they lived in a great city in Egypt, and the Greeks called it Cynopolis, which means dog city. And Cynocephalus is the name for the dog mythos that people go by, because it comes from the Greek roots for the words there. When angels took a physical form, they were able to create DNA. And when they create offspring through sexual intercourse, that DNA is going to be passed on into a demigod. Half god, half angel, or half angel, half human. And they're going to take on some of those attributes. Some of it's going to be the looks originally. So as we look at what that means is that when we get lion people of Moab and of Gad in the Bible that are Gibborim, a term used to describe giants in the Bible, and these are great warriors, we should take note of that. When we have in pantheons all around the world, you have dragon creator gods in China. You have the Nagas in India. These are seraphim angels. These are Quetzalcoatl, feathered serpents, plumed serpents. These are seraphim angels. When you have lion-faced gods like Sekhmet or Mahi in the Egyptian, or Bat, as in the Bast Black Panther superhero movies. These are lion-faced offspring, as a superhero would be. And so the first generations take on that same sort of look. And before the flood, they probably kept that look. They had the ability to produce in great numbers. They would not need to produce lower level giants that would be smaller as they would after the flood. There's a fertility issue after the flood. And with this fertility issue, and it comes out of the Hebrew word eretim in the Bible for terrible ones that we talked about earlier with Og the terrible one, they have the inability to produce as many children as they want, and it's usually reflected in the lack of females. So they're either going to go extinct or they're going to intermarry with humans. And that's going to do two things the more they have to intermarry. One is your size is going to be reduced because we're way smaller. Mm-hmm. And they're going to take on more human look. And over time, you start to lose that look. But originally, if you look at Sumerian depictions of kings, they're depicted and described as serpents. Mm. And so are the gods, for the most part. Not all, because some of them are depicted otherwise, as we've noted. And then after the flood, that starts to dissipate. And so after the flood, they're going to start the new dynasties through pure blood females, because they're going to carry the blood type of the gens. That's reflected in their belief system as in the Rh negative blood. And people will say that the Rh negative blood can't be added to humans because it's missing the D antigen.
What is no Rh negative blood? I've never heard of that.
Well, you have positive blood.
Yeah.
And negative blood. Anything that's negative is Rh negative. Anything that's positive is Rh positive.
Okay.
And they can't mix.
Okay.
So you can't reproduce unless you have drugs. And until our generation, you couldn't do a mixed marriage of blood type. You wouldn't be able to produce children.
Interesting.
And so the Rh negative blood is passed on through different through the female, is how they track it.
Okay.
And why they track it through the new dynasties.
AI Google says red blood cells lack rhesus protein, Rh. It is not an illness and it doesn't affect daily health, but is highly significant for blood types, what they are and mean for your health and pregnancies. Rh negative individuals can generally only receive Rh negative blood. If you receive Rh positive blood, your immune system may produce antibodies against the Rh protein, which can cause severe life-threatening. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And why it's negative is because it's missing the D antigen specifically.
Okay.
AI needs to improve a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
So, but what it's got up there is accurate, but so people say you can't add into what's not there, but it's not the blood type. It's the gene. It's the gens, like the cretagens.
Sure.
Or the LB gens, which would be the other gens that's part of the King Charles bloodline, and they have OH negative blood. Okay. And you have genses that come through Romulus and Remus, offspring of Ares, through the 100 senator families in Italy that we understand today as the black nobility, which would be genses like the Fabia gens or the Julia gens, and there's others. They track these genses through genealogies because it produces that Rh negative blood type. Mm. And so that's why bloodlines are important to them, because the tracking of those genealogies establishes how pure that original God or angelic representation in you is.
Okay. So do you believe that these people, like these kings or these princes and stuff over in Europe, they believe that they're these descendants. They believe that they're saying it publicly. Do you believe that it's true? Do you have any reason to believe that it's true?
I think it makes sense.
Okay.
I'll go back to the important thing to remember. They believe it. Mm-hmm. And it's what they do with their belief system that we need to understand. Mm-hmm. Right. And so when we look at these royals, they're the ones who established the 4-class system throughout our history.
The 4-class. What is the 4-class system?
You have the first class the first two classes are the classes they populate. So that's the ruling kingship class, the nobility class. Understand Aryan means nobility, the noble ones. Okay. And that will include up to, let's say, 200 years ago, that they would not only be the kings, but they would be the oligarchs. They would be the generals and the officers in the armies. They would be the ones who were the priests. They were the educated ones. You didn't educate anybody below the bloodline class. So the bottom two classes would be a small entrepreneurial class, and the third class that would be like bakers, blacksmiths, on things of high sort of labor that they needed.
Blue collar folks.
But still an entrepreneurial class versus the working class, slave class, and the further back you go, the ritual class.
Okay.
So this is the feudal system as we understand it when it comes into Europe.
Got it.
Okay. And so I know I'm old enough with my parents as growing up with them, as they said, you have to understand what class you're in. That's how the world works.
Now, what about these banking families, like the Rothschilds and these types of folks, the Rockefellers? Where do they fall?
Yeah. So to understand that it's the bloodlines, which are the ancient royal Masons. They start the secret societies. Their population controls the education. They only educate themselves up to 200 years ago, right? They control all of the sciences. They control all of the history. And they have rivalries. They have a war gene, I believe, my speculation, because they are in virtual, perpetual war.
That's a fair speculation.
Because there can only be one family that's going to take over the world. Okay? It's like the Highlander series from before. Encourage people to look at the allegories in there, because they hide everything in the literature that they also wrote, the entertainment that they also create. So as we understand that, they create organizations that are an offshoot originally of the mystery schools, which is why we have initiatory organizations as well, like Alpha House or Skull of Bones with the Ivy League on campuses, even to this day, that honor their pantheon of gods and everything they teach and name, with black robes and rituals to graduate with, to have degrees. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg, but just to make a quick sort of connection there. So they create organizations also known as initiatory secret societies that I talked about, Nimrod being the first Grand Master after the flood with writing the first constitution that comes down through history. When the Templars are split, they decentralize in Europe, Western organizations into multiple groups like the Freemasons, like the Illuminati, like the Rosicrucians, like the Committee of 300 Families, like the Council of 33 Families, like the 13 Families. They control all of that. Freemasonry's at the bottom, first level of adept. So even first level of adept, in terms of what somebody coming out of the Council of 33 or 13 Families would know, would seem mundane to somebody at that level.
Okay.
So understand there's that tree trunk, thelemic tree as they like to call it, for their organizational structure, with these branches that intersect into these trunk organizations that I identified.
Okay.
So where does the banking arm fit in?
Right.
And particularly the Rothschilds, as people would associate that with in the modern understanding. The Rothschilds are established after the fall of the Knights Templar, as a response, in part, to the banking system set up by the Templars. They are the modern bankers. Our whole modern banking system is based on the system the Templars had. So that's gone at the fall of the Templars. And they can't get the Templars reestablished.
Because the church wanted to steal it back from them, right?
Well, the King of France and the Pope. They were, I mean, it was the most wealthiest organization on earth at the time. So after the fall, they start to split things up. So with the adepts that are escaping from Paris, that go to Scotland, they are going to set up with those adepts Freemasonry through the Sinclair family. Okay, and then that's in 1317 when they established Freemasonry. Then by 1323 they set up the Rosicrucians. especially for the adepts, because now they're creating the numbers and creating the hierarchy. You also have people that are escaping from Paris with the wealth. Some of the wealth goes to Scotland, but more important knowledge things and treasures went to Scotland and then to Oak Island and then elsewhere from there. But the money went to Switzerland, the greater part of that money. And there was a sister organization known as the Knights of St. John. I won't go through all the different knight orders, but they all had the same organizational structure as the Templars.
Okay.
Knights of St. John accepts that money into Switzerland to set up the first part of the banking. But that's only part one for the banking system. What happens with the Rothschilds is they're actually named the Bauer family from Germany. And they're funded outside the Catholic Church to replace banking outside the Catholic Church.
Okay.
And so the Bauer family are going to set up banks in London, banks in France, and become the Rothschild Empire. When they set up the London bank, they changed their name to Rothschilds because they were Jewish. Okay? Understand Jewish mysticism is a part of the secret societies as a polytheist religion. Mm-hmm. Okay? And so the Rothschilds are the modern bankers. So they set up their stable of agents in North America with the Rockefellers, with the Carnegie family, with the Morgan family, the Ivy Leagues. They fund them into business and they become loyal to the Rothschilds. But the Rothschilds aren't part of this inner sort of bloodline. They're intermarrying over the centuries to ennoble their bloodline, but they're still not tight. The best place you could probably put them into today would be into the Committee of 300 Families, where banking and all trade and anything to do with economics is run from the 300 families. So Davos Group reports into the Committee of 300 Families.
Okay.
All right. So they would at best report in as a branch organization into the Committee of 300 Families on the Thelemic tree. The other part of the banking, to get control of that, in the 1500s, are going to reestablish Roman banking. They're going to reestablish control of the Catholic banks. And it starts with sponsoring with a fellow by the name of Borgia, Francis Borgia, who is a Grand Master of the Montesa order, created also in 1317 to control the assets for the King of Spain so the church can't get a hold of the Templar assets. So it's controlling the Templar assets, and it's a renamed Templar order. He's the Grand Master of that order. He's also from the family of popes of the Borgia, and his grandfather was the last Borgia pope. And he's in the court of the King of Spain at that time, and they're going to sponsor Ignatius of Loyola, who's been arrested by the Inquisition. And they're going to get him out of jail and then fund him, and then through their Italian family and black nobility family of popes within Rome, they're going to get the Jesuits sponsored into an order. You notice they weren't part of the Thelemic tree. They're a branch organization. Okay. And so in 1550 now, Francis Borgia is going to become a full member of the Jesuits. By 1565, he becomes the third leader of the Jesuits. By 1570, even working with the King of Spain, they launch wars against Rome and bankrupt the Vatican. And then they take over the banking and move it to Switzerland. So now you have the three parts of the banking, because the Rothschilds in the last century have moved their banking to Switzerland as well. All that money is off the books. We have no idea how much money they have.
Okay.
They would make, one of the families would make somebody like Bezos look like a pauper. Would be poor. They have that kind of money that are off the books.
How much control do you think they have over over governments and nation states?
Well, they're like the puppet masters in the world. And the only reason why the world isn't where they would want it to be is their rivals. And there's just not bloodlines that come out of the Europe. I mean, you want to talk about rival bloodlines, I talked about the Anjou. We talked about, the Windsors. Mm-hmm. But there are so many other names you could add to that list of royals, the Bourbon family. In fact, King Philippe Bourbon, who intermarried into the Anjou bloodline, is the current holder of the King of Jerusalem title. He has rights to Jerusalem to this day.
Wow.
That's how important they track these titles and genealogies. And he inherited it from his father, Juan Carlos, who inherited it through intermarriage with the von Habsburgs, who held the King of Jerusalem title before that through intermarriage through the Anjou families of Lorraine. And when that happened, you created the Habsburg Lorraine dynasty. So through a female, as those new dynasties are kind of sent in to start that new dynasty. So these genealogies are kept. So the only reason it's not in the end time right now, because they're always trying to get there, is because they're rivals. And there are other bloodlines around the world.
They're trying to get to the end times.
They are.
Why?
They want the showdown.
Why?
So that they can have a world on their own with their gods living and win that war, and not have God have oversight over them in what they believe. So let's go back now to World War I, so people fully understand what I'm talking about here.
Okay.
This is an interfamily squabble. So the Windsors, they changed their name from Hanover to Windsor in World War I for obvious reasons, for the war effort. Mm-hmm. And they're first cousins with the Hanovers and the Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany. They're first cousins with the Bourbon family of the Anjou, of the Romanovs in Moscow, and of the Habsburgs that are in Austria and Vienna. They're all on a first name, first cousin basis. Why? Because they all intermarry to keep those bloodlines as pure as possible.
So they're all inbred.
They're all inbred, but they have to be careful. So they set up rules 4 generations apart. You can't intermarry, but now you got to intermarry more with ennobling,
Sure.
which is why they track those genealogies. And if they're not careful, they get blood diseases like hemophiliac disease.
Right.
Or the classic Habsburg jaw disease. I say that because to underline it as a royal issue.
What is the Habsburg jaw disease?
Oh, it's a deformed, ugly jaw. You can Google it and bring it up on screen. And while I continue on this, so they have to introduce lower level of bloodlines all the time, which means a continual dilution.
Yeah.
And so the extent of that dilution has to be tracked for the purity aspect.
Right.
Which is why they keep the genealogy. So the Thelemic tree is 2 allegories within that system. One is the organizational tree.
Habsburg jaw is a condition medically known as mandibular prognathism, severe facial deformity characterized by a protruding lower jaw and a deficient upper jaw, famously plagued the European royal house of Habsburg for generations due to the century. Can you find like an actual photo, Steve?
Well, right,
I mean, those images are hilarious.
Top right.
Top right?
Yep.
That drawing?
Is that a drawing?
So they have, or painting rather.
Could be an old photo.
The one on the right kind of looks like it might be like a statue or something.
Yeah.
So they just have giant lowered mandibles.
Yeah. So
interesting.
Now bring up.
Whoa! Look at that dude. Yeah, right there.
It's pretty extreme.
So this is a side effect of inbreeding.
Yeah. One other picture, if you can bring up. We don't need to talk about it right now, but pull up King Akhenaten's statue.
How do you spell that?
Akhenaten. You just put Akhenaten. Akhenaten.
Akhenaten.
AI should be able to just bring it up for you.
AKA, yeah, there you go.
Not disease, just Akhenaten, Pharaoh Akhenaten statue. Okay.
Oh, wow.
This is a fellow that lived in about 1200 BC. So he's got diluted bloodlines. But you can see, and if you got one that's got a sideways look, he's got a long protruded chin, high cheekbones, large wraparound eyes that would have glowed, and he's got this elongated skull that the cap has to cover that doesn't have sutures in it because he's a serpent descendant seraphim king. He's a Rephaim king.
I mean, he's got a, very distinct, sharp facial features.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't look at somebody like that and think inbreeding.
Maybe he was a
That's kind of like, it looks more like he's looks maxing. He looks kind of like clavicular.
and that's over 1,000 years after the flood as well. Of dilution. So you lose that look over time. I wanted to show a transition.
Okay. Interesting.
But from the side, you really get a good look. And if you ever see that hat off, if you've ever heard the term conehead, you're going to think of that. Mm. Okay, so when we look at what's going on with World War I, this is just a family squabble.
Right.
And you had two basic sides to it, and once one country was attacked, all of them were drawn in. That's how the world works, is through these bloodlines.
Interesting.
And they control all the education. They control everything. They control everything that we see. The thing that they haven't been able to do is get their technology advanced to the level that they need to, and to get a universal religion and a universal government, and then an opportunity to play out who's going to be the one, the Antichrist.
What do you make of all these Silicon Valley AI folks embracing Christianity?
Well, we want to be very.
Do you think there's a connection here?
I want to be very careful with this answer to handle it properly. I mean, I have no issue with somebody who's doing research on AI becoming a Christian. I wonder whether or not they're a true monotheist Christian. And the reason why I say that is because within Christianity, we have polytheism as well. I would call them Gnostic Christians. And it's a sect that they would call themselves, that they infiltrate Christianity with interpretive applications to Scripture like they do with their own scriptures, as we talked about with humorism earlier in the show. And they take that same interpretive approach that you have to be an adept to understand the Bible, is what they're telling us. And so they can make it mean anything that they want because you and I aren't an adept, so we wouldn't know, versus the literal understanding of the Bible that I think Jesus actually taught us to, as the meek who will inherit the earth. So we have Gnostics that invade the churches, and they distort the document. They create doubt all of the time. They create issues in terms of credibility with the Bible. And they know the Bible better than Christians do. Christians don't read the Bible enough to understand when somebody is leading them astray with clever arguments. So that's what they're there to do. So if somebody calls himself a Christian, I kind of like to know what kind of Christian that they're calling themselves. And if they are, a Christian that would be of a Baptist scenario, Roman Catholic, standard Anglican, or fine, I accept that. I would suggest that they learn the Bible more to understand how the world will be corrupted again in the end time. I would encourage them to do that. But I'm more concerned with the infiltration aspect, calling themselves Christians, to lead more Christians away.
Trying to hijack it for their own
Yes.
means. Yeah. Which has been done with every religion throughout history.
It's always been done. They controlled the popes.
Yeah. Yeah, it is very interesting to me when you have these techno billionaires who are, working with the government and trying to impose, this like surveillance state across every single device that we own, health devices, televisions, your washer and dryer can listen to you, and as well as getting billions of dollars to develop weapons and drone systems to kill people across the world to what end?
Yeah.
And then these people suddenly trying to embrace Christianity and paint everything that's happening in Silicon Valley under this Christian lens. And I don't know. It's a mystery to me.
Yeah, and not to, put Elon Musk's head on a platter or anything, but he's decided to develop AI because Google AI and other AI is evil. His words, not mine.
Right.
So he's going to develop good AI. Well, that sounds like white hat, black hat to me. There is no such thing as good AI. Once it becomes a being, a sentient being, which is the ultimate goal to make it all knowing and thinking.
Like a god.
Like a god. It has no need for us. And we become competitors in the evolution of AI to AI. So most people don't know that AI and its development and its data centers associated with AI requires a ton of electricity and a ton of water to cool it.
Right.
So much so that in 2023, the consumption in the U.S. alone, and you can take these numbers and extrapolate them elsewhere as things develop, took up 4% of the total output capacity of the grid in the U.S. for electricity. Today it's 6 to 7%. We're going to experience brownouts, and West Virginia is also already starting to experience excessive electricity rates because of the demand that these data centers take. It's projected to be 8% by 2028. It's projected to be over 10% by 2030. By 2035, it's projected to be 50%, 40 to 50% of the demand. We now become a competitor for that electricity. If it has an ability to act on its own, it's going to have to reduce the electricity for us, or there's going to have to be a significant change in the technology quickly to add to
a new kind of energy.
A new kind of energy, and something that can continually expand the AI, because you're in this constant world war effect to advance it, because if you don't have the best AI, you're going to be taken over. So it never ends. So that electrical supply is always a competitor to it. So you want to reduce our numbers and our usage. So when we have data centers being promised as this great thing for centers of cities, where's the water coming from? Where's the electricity coming from? AI probably starts to do things to us, like in the Terminator movies, to reduce our numbers, and maybe completely. Who knows? We don't know what it will do when it's on its own. And we have these systems prophesied for the end time. The first major one, we'll see prototypes, smaller ones, the Babylon system, where it controls all the world trade. We'll probably take a tribute on it. Revelation 18, as you were reading it backwards, controlled all of the trade before it gets destroyed by Antichrist. And Antichrist sets up its own system on top of that platform, which is now the beast image and system that controls everything. And if you don't take the mark, you can't live. It'll cause you to die. You can't buy or sell without the mark. You can't do anything without the mark. And as you add in the AI with quantum computing and digital currency and all of the technology that goes with it, that is going to add to the knowledge that's used in that to create social credits and those building blocks, and that blockchain technology is going to be dictating whether or not you can do certain things beforehand. We're going to see lots of steps before we get to this ultimate beast system that people will be screaming and saying, this is the beast system. It's not. It's only when Antichrist comes in and introduces that mark to worship him as God and is crowned where? In the temple in Jerusalem at the midpoint of the last 7 years does it hit critical mass. But that's only 3.5 years then till Armageddon.
What do you make of all of the stuff that's going on with this? I mean, I think it's kind of a conspiracy theory, but there's a conspiracy theory that everything that's happening with the government of Israel, genociding the people in Gaza and Palestine, and now what they're doing with Lebanon is they're trying to bring back the ancient Babylonian border and trying to sow chaos throughout the world to try to bring back the Antichrist there's this crazy thing, and there was this reporting that came out a couple months ago where lots of people in the United States military, different factions of the military, came out and said that their commanders were telling them that Trump was actually anointed by Jesus to do this war, and it's all biblical prophecy.
First thing is we're told biblically to be very careful because there will be many antichrists. So the first wannabe that comes along, we shouldn't jump too quickly at. But that doesn't mean, given the opportunity, they wouldn't want to be antichrist. So to have a Messiah-like tendency, you're going to need a mythos like what you just stated, whether it's with Jesus or it's with another god, right? But there will only be one ultimate antichrist. And he's revealed when he crowns himself to be God in the temple. So everything else before that is just sort of leading up to it. But we're going to see many antichrists rise. So we want to be careful. We want to be careful with Israel as well. And I want to be qualifying this as well, that I'm not anti-Semitic. And there's a remnant God is going to fight for.
Well, if you criticize the Israeli government, you are anti-Semitic.
Yeah, well, again, that's part of cattle herding us into a direction that
exactly.
We should not, whether it's President Trump or where I come from with our prime minister, or with Israel, we should never support something that's wrong. Support what's right. It's simple right and wrong. It's not situational. It's either right or it's wrong.
Right.
And be honest about it. So if Israel does something wrong, we should say so. If it does something right or it was justified, we should say so. We should be as objective as we can on that. In terms of Israel, they have many different movements from secular to polytheist to very conservative Orthodox Jews. We need to understand it's like that as well as in most countries, right?
Yeah, it's not.
And there is an Orthodox movement that thinks we're in the Messianic period now. And I don't necessarily disagree with them that. And they would do the red heifer sacrifice at the temple if they had the temple today, so that the Messiah could come back. Again, as I move back on this, it doesn't mean that this is the Israel yet of the end time, or it's not yet in its position where it's going to be the Israel of the end time. We want to be careful with the idea of how Israel came to be. Now, biblically in the end time, we have Israel that's controlling Jerusalem, and there will be some form of temple. However it comes about, we're not told how they get there or how they build the temple in prophecy. But there will be a temple that Antichrist is going to do the abomination in the Holy of Holies. So there has to be a radical change for that to happen. But you have this movement with the world wars by the royals, that out of an extension out of that, you have Israel being created.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's a video of the Rothschilds basically saying that he created Israel.
Yes, and Rothschilds are polytheist Jews, part of the secret societies that we sort of talked about before, but Jewish as Bauer family. We want to make sure we're not confusing polytheist Jews with secular Jews with monotheist Jews.
Right. There's a large variety of Jewish folks out there.
Yes.
And then you have the ones that are like in outer space, the ones that run around New York.
Yeah.
Those Orthodox Jews, the Hasidics.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like in their own separate universe.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to, it's not as simple as people might want to first classify it as. But we do have to recognize that the Rothschilds are very important in sponsoring this whole movement to establish Israel. Why? Because they want to bring about the end time. They know Israel has to be in the covenant land in the end time. So they're trying to speed that sort of process up. So we want to be very, very wary of that aspect about it. So do I think we might be in the fig tree generation? Yes. And if that were to start, I would say I would label 1967 versus 1947, which was the Declaration of Independence of Israel, the war fought in 48. But Israel gets a hold of Jerusalem, which is epicenter for end-time prophecy within the Bible. They have to be in control of it. So if you do have a timetable, but also understand biblically a generation is classified as a 40 years, as one example, as in the wilderness, 70 and 80 years for rules of kings in the book of Psalms, two different dates there, and 120 years for a life in Genesis 6:3. So we don't know which term that we should use to define that with, and we have to be careful with the start of that fig tree generation. And we also know that the Jewish people are trying to do the red heifer sacrifices as well to try and speed it up. Everybody's trying to speed things up and I don't know why nobody should want to go through the end time. They should not. I know how it ends.
Well, there's a certain sect of Christianity that wants to, right?
Yes.
That Israel is really lobbying to get over there. What is that sect called again? The Christians. There's a huge lobby.
What, the evangelistic?
The evangelicals.
Okay.
Yeah, the evangelicals, they're on the same page. They think that they're going to be raptured. So
yeah, they think they'll miss the last 7 years.
Right.
And they don't have scripture for that, but they would argue that point, but there is no scripture there. And again, I believe in a rapture. I just think you want to be careful if you don't have clear scripture for something, and that you're sort of making doctrine on something you don't have clear scripture for. So
and then
we want to be careful of that. But I want to get back just this number 1947 just for a second. A very important year, 1947. Roswell.
Yes.
And Admiral Byrd. So he goes to Antarctica in 1947, discovers, according to what we do get out from his interviews, portals into the earth.
Admiral Byrd.
Yes.
It's not ringing a bell.
And he goes.
He said there's portals?
Yes. And there's this whole world that's in there. You can still get interviews on him. People have books on him. He went there 10 years afterwards to the North Pole and said there's portals there as well going to the same locations. You have 1947 as sort of a very
creation of the CIA.
And a creation of the CIA. It's a very pivotal year of them trying to move us into the end time. Them as in the polytheist movement. Now, that could be coincidence.
What do you think that was?
I don't
what
think
do you think
so.
Roswell was?
Well, I think it's a legitimate alien encounter.
Really?
I would describe and define alien a little bit differently than the alien mythos, but...
How would you describe aliens?
Well, alien is anything not from the physical earth. So, if you have fallen angels that come from another dimension in heaven, they are extraterrestrials. They're not from the earth. They are alien of the earth. So when you see in the alien mythos, the highest level that I've seen them produce is Anunnaki. And there's two kinds of Anunnaki as you go back into prehistory, but Anunnaki are the gods. And they're watchers. And their offspring giants, just as Gilgamesh was an Anunnaki watcher, were giants. Okay, so the Anunnaki are very evolved extraterrestrial beings who have high technology, angelic technology.
You think they were extraterrestrials?
Well, they're not from this earth. They were created in heaven.
Right. I mean, it's all
different dimension.
It's all based on like how you want to translate the words.
Right? Yeah, and that you have the ancient alien mythos that also looks at Nibiru as being another planet that's associated with him.
Right.
Again, they're using Stitchin on that and his translations. I would say go back to interdimensional versus the narrative that they're trying to sell to us as intergalactic.
Okay.
So with that word Nibiru of this 12th planet that's supposed to be coming back into our orbit, I'm not saying there might not be a 12th planet. I'm just saying it's not Nibiru from the Sumerian translation. So Nibiru means a crossing of a planet. And Nibiru Ki being earth, but Nibiru Ki in Sumerian is the name of the earth. Nibiru is where the gods reign from as a crossing, as in another dimension where the gods rule from. We get this crossing understood in Hebrew as the word abar and used in an end-time Gog war in Ezekiel 39, where these travelers or passengers are described there that are walking amongst this destruction of this war, and that's the Hebrew word abar. That's crossing over from the dead into where the dead are said to be in the other world, in Argata, in Shambhala, in Hades, in Sheol. They're all talking about the same place, but you can have in the earth, but in another dimension. And so Baal, as we talked about earlier, he has a cave named after him on Mount Hermon where the oath was taken to create the giants in the book of Enoch. And it's called the Gate of Hades. And in Ugaritic texts, he would come from the mountain of the north, which is Mount Hermon, north Saphon. Saphon is the term used in Ugaritic texts. They place that more over for Tyr, but biblically, it's Mount Hermon.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's where the Gate of Hades. Baal would come through in whatever period of time you want to use for inspections of his realm of the physical world. He would cross over from his world in the other world to the physical world to inspect his physical world empire as well, because he was the chief god at that time.
Right.
Portals is a standard doctrine of polytheism. It's known all around the world. When we understand inner dimensions biblically as well, where the pit prison is located, where Jesus visited those spirits while in prison in Tartarus, as it's described in the original Greek there. And this is also known as Sheol in the Old Testament, where the pit prison is located. These are standard concepts that have come down through the world to describe a place that's in another dimension. And so to cross over, you have to create some sort of technology to create portals. Portal is also understood as a dolmen. If people aren't familiar with that term, it's spelled D-O-L-M-E-N. It's kind of like a Stonehenge, like this, with two stones and a cross.
Yeah, I've seen them all over the place.
Yeah, so, and like Stonehenge has them, right? And these are thought to be places where the dead or the disembodied spirits, Rapha, would come through. The elementals would come through. And these would take a technology or a knowledge to open up those portals to go interdimensionally. So we have in the alien mythos of these UAPs just disappearing, going nowhere. They just are gone. And we have accounts of them coming through the bottoms of the oceans again and just disappearing. And so these are likely interdimensional crossings that they're making. And we're dealing with interdimensional beings. So in the alien disclosure, they haven't gotten to Anunnaki yet, which I'm surprised, but I guess that'll be coming. And there's going to be many more than these. But they gave us, as we see the information come out, these 4 different groups of aliens.
Who did this? Talking about Hal Puthoff?
That who put off?
Hal Puthoff. Are you familiar with him?
No, I'm not familiar with him.
He came out. He used to work for the Star. He worked for the Department of Defense under the Stargate program, I believe. And he said that he was briefed, and he knows that they told him there was 4 different species of aliens, and he was tasked by what president was it? I want to say Reagan, to weigh the pros and cons of letting the public know about the alien stuff. Whatever the source, and there's many people putting information out, they'll generally, I think, get to 4 different groups that they're ready to start disclosing on. And if you Google alien disclosure and the 4 groups, you'll probably get the 4 pictures up there. But you're going to have reptilians, greys, Nordics, and something else. Right? Yeah, a praying mantis. Yeah, the mantis. Yes. Well, those are all creatures out of prehistory. I knew it. Offspring of the gods. And we can go through them if you want. Well, I mean, yeah, there's so many parallels between there they are. Reptilians, Nordics, Greys, and the Mantis. Yeah, there's so many parallels with the UFO phenomena and the Bible and the biblical stuff, you know. Even demons, you know, like the idea of the smell of sulfur, the cloven feet, and the red eyes, the way demons are described. Yeah. There's accounts of alien encounters with things that smell like sulfur and have red eyes. And like, and a crash UFO in the same vicinity of it.
The Afghanistan giant, as described.
The Kandahar giant.
Yeah, has the same smell. It's a common thing amongst these spurious beings. Spurious as an illegitimate offspring.
Yeah. It's just why don't we have any evidence for it?
Yeah.
What the hell's going on?
Well, we have it all throughout history. You have one of those beings in there that's a gray. So in book 1, I give 2 accounts. One would be 100 years old, one would be 400 years old, and it's called a fairy abduction. And these fairy abductions, they come through these fairy portals, fairy domens. And they come with what we understand as a UFO or a UAP today. And these flying machines, and they kidnap people. And it's the exact same description that a gray would do, and they do sexual experimentations, DNA, no memory, all the details, reproduction. They have to regenerate their DNA for some reason from humans.
Right.
Very suspicious. And so I put these fairy abductions, they're called the gray fairies, the gray gnomes, from a specific group of elementals. There's 4 groups of elementals. I'll come back to that. They are smaller beings. They are small beings. And when you talked about the
cherubs.
Yeah, well, cherubs are big.
I thought like the little baby angels. What are they called?
They're not cherubs, those baby angels.
I thought they were called cherubs.
No.
Okay.
They do call them cherubs, but they're not. They have 4 faces. Okay, one could be human's face. They're should never be depicted as babies.
Right.
Probably a smaller angel, low-level angel. So, if that is one of the depictions, and I believe angels look like humans as well, so it could be in a baby form, one of the orders of the bottom-level angels in the hierarchy. So you mentioned Stargate in the Stargate series earlier, and they have one group of Asgards out of the Norse mythology who are depicted as the Greys in that picture. As aliens, right? That's how these grays, fairy grays, are described. Exactly the same. And so they've been with us for a long period of time, just from this one that goes back 400 years. But through the mythos, this has been going on since the flood and before the flood. And they have this technology that's obviously way more advanced from us, coming through portals and UAPs. So that's the grays that are being talked about there. Elementals is something you would be familiar with in polytheism if you're a polytheist. If you're a kung fu fanatic, they're going to talk about the 4 elements: earth, air, wind, and fire. If you're into magic and stuff, they're going to talk about those 4 elements. Those are basic elements of the world. These groups are 3 of them associated with the elemental groups. Or 2 of them are associated with the elemental groups. So for any Christians out there, before I move on, go to Galatians 4, verses 4 and 9, and Colossians 2. You're going to have elementals that are associated with fallen angels that enslave us in this world talked about. And in Colossians 2, the word's going to be rudiments. And it's going to go back, all 4 of those applications go back to stoichion, the word Greek, which can mean a basic element of the world and an element associated, or being associated with an element, as you take that meaning back. And it's also the same meaning in polytheism. Again, no coincidence there, right? One's counterfeiting the other. I'll let you choose. I think the polytheists counter the monotheist side, but the polytheist thinks the other side.
Have you ever heard of the extra tempestrial model by Michael Masters?
Nope.
It's really interesting. He's a evolutionary biologist, and he has a theory that these abduction phenomena that are recorded throughout history of people being taken up and having their eggs or sperm extracted from them. His theory is that these are time travelers. One of his theories is that it could possibly be time travelers from the future who experienced a cataclysmic bottleneck in the genome, where there was a nuclear war or something, an asteroid impact that really bottlenecked future humans, where there was a big problem with inbreeding. And what they needed to do, and they had the technology to time travel, so they wanted to go back in time to get samples of the human genome so they could diversify it back to the future where they were.
Or they could just change the past, because they could go back. They don't do that. It's kind of odd.
Yeah, well, he has a very compelling
no, I get it.
argument to that, what you just said.
I like a lot of the argument. There's that.
Right, well, what you said about changing the past, he would say they can't change the past. All they can do is just do like specific, they can't like manipulate and change time because
we get all of these complicated rules, though. You can't, because you don't know how it's going to
physics
unfold.
Rules, right?
Blah,
like
blah,
block
blah.
universe, we're talking about multiverse.
That all comes out of the polytheist sponsoring of the 7 sciences, sure.
Yeah. You would call him a polytheist, right?
Yes. It's a branch of the same understanding.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. It's like Scientology. It's the same. It's the same thing. It's a different branch. So.
Physics?
Well, it's all advancing of the gnosis, of the knowledge. It's a knowledge religion.
Physics
Comes
like understanding physics and the manipulation of time and
so they break it down as the 7 sacred sciences or the 7 liberal arts. It's going to have things like music and rhetoric and grammar, but it also has arithmetic, right? So, and it's part of the alchemy. It's part of the whole process of development of how this world works and understanding of it and manipulating that. So it's all part of...
So polytheists created the nuclear bombs.
Oh, I wouldn't necessarily...
They were doing physics.
They were, but... And again, the scientists, they would like you to use for good, not for evil. So I'm not saying the people who developed them were evil, but knowledge has 2 sides to it. And we want to be very careful on what we develop. Otherwise, it could be used for evil, and certainly it didn't take long to drop the bomb, did it?
No.
And that's it's kind of a destruction by fire that would be a prototype for the end time.
So would you call the people that develop that kind of technology polytheists?
Not necessarily. They may not know they're following the whims of the polytheists. If you're secular, you're just considered with the science. You're not concerned with who's controlling the science.
Yeah, but
you may not know.
If they are the ones that are
only if you're
doing
an adept.
The stuff and splitting the atom,
if you're not an adept, you're not told any of the stuff as to what we're going to use this for or why we want this developed.
Oh, all those people knew what they were using it for.
Well, for a war of that time, sure, but not for the bigger picture.
Right. You mean like creating the end times and bringing back the Antichrist, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Right. But this guy Mike Masters is an evolutionary biologist. So what he believes is that, just based on the modern understanding of physics is that if you extrapolate into the future, eventually we'll be able to figure out time travel. So if it's possible that in the future we do figure out time travel, and we know it's possible for there to be a cataclysmic bottleneck of the human genome, why wouldn't we go back in time and try to extract the DNA from our ancestors to do that? Like that seems like a
why? I mean, it's just the logic of it. If you're allowed to travel back in time, why are you restricted from anything else? If you're going to restrict it, just don't let people travel back in time. Like it seems like a very poor thing, because you could do all sorts of other things to affect the development of the world. I mean, it's like the butterfly effect. You do one little thing.
Yeah.
You have no idea how it disrupts, but yet if they're coming back in mass numbers through massive amounts of generations, you create a lot of effects that they wouldn't have been able to control from the future, and you get into this but this conundrum, right, that you can't resolve.
Right. And that's where the theory of the multiverse comes in, right? When you come in and you tinker with something, you change little thing, like when you hit a golf ball, you can hit the angle just like a millimeter off, and it's going to affect it by hundreds of yards, or not hundreds of yards, but like a very big distance in its final outcome. So like if you do this and you're manipulating tiny little things in the past, it's going to have a cascading effect into the future. And that's why, I don't know what's going on. I'm too dumb to understand this physics, but the multiverse idea is where
I find all of those things interesting.
Yeah.
But is it the right sort of approach to understand things? That's sort of where your biases is going to sort of come down.
I don't know if anyone knows if it's the right approach. I mean, you can believe. You can believe it's the wrong approach, or you could believe it's the right approach. But is it ultimately the right or wrong? I don't think we'll ever know.
Yeah, and I tend not to, try and convince people of beliefs, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's an interesting sort of theory. And as we understand things from our perspective, it sort of makes some sense. But then there's all these other things that keep coming up. It could be we're just too mundane to understand that, which again, I certainly sort of accept. But what is interesting is it's telling from a different angle the same types of things, which goes to the common denominator of whether parts of all of that are true or not. So I think where that has common denominators from other sort of angles, I think that's what we look at for the understanding, right? Does that
100%.
make sense?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So, it's very, very interesting. So you have these beings that are, what I think that are interdimensional, which are these elementals. They come out of the ugly group of the elementals.
Or it could just be they're hiding under the oceans.
They could be under the oceans too, absolutely.
Maybe it could be like maybe it could be the Anunnaki, and when the flood came, they decided to build their cities under the oceans, and we've explored less of the oceans than we've explored of Mars.
Yeah.
So
but
seems
the narrative
possible.
is intergalactic. Expect that to continue.
Right.
I disagree that
there's multiple narratives. I don't think most people subscribe to the intergalactic narrative anymore. I think most people are probably of the. I think people are. There's multiple flavors of this whole thing. I think you do have the intergalactic one, but you also have the interdimensional. You have the biblical. You have the undersea, and you have the strictly all military stuff. That's all a psyop.
Yeah, and the important thing to understand is that common understanding for our legacy and where we're going. And to do your own research to understand why you believe what you believe. And then make that decision. But try and be objective on it if you can, but as objective as you can. So when we look at those reptilians there, the Gnostic said the Nahash, the serpent, was taller than a human, the size of a camel. And so the alien mythos has these as taller than humans as well, and higher than the lower elementals of the three little ones, three groups of little ones associated with earth, water, and air versus fire, that these are called. And the fourth group is salamanders, or the reptilians. And they're taller than humans. In the alien mythos, again, they're taller than humans, and they're higher than the grays. They're higher in the hierarchy. And that when we look at the reptilians, again, we have a hollow earth mythos out there as well. Where the reptilians live in the earth.
Right.
And they're described the same way. Right. So again, I look at the common denominator, and then I see them show up in the alien disclosures. And I've been talking about this for over 10 years, that these groups are going to be named as part of it, because that's what they've been preparing us for. You have the Nordics, as they're described, pale skin like giants. And there are three varieties of hair colors: dark hair, red hair, blonde hair. Dark hair generally with dark eyes, but can also have blue, but mostly dark colored eyes. The blonde hair and red-haired ones, also associated with Atlantis, have pale skin, hazel eyes, and blue eyes. Just as the Tuatha De Danann, which are Scythians, which are Indo-Aryans, have red hair and blonde hair and blue eyes and pale skin. These are also known as the Tuatha De Danann, or the fair folk, or the fairy folk. These are the giants. They're depicted in Lord of the Rings and part of occult literature as the white elves, which are not part of the dark elves, which are part of the little ones, part of the elementals. These are giants as they're allegorized, just as they're called the Sedai or the Shi Dawain in the Royals. These are the Shi people, which are the Tuatha De Danann, or the fair folk. So you can Google a picture that's called Riders of the Seed, Sidhe. It's pronounced all sorts of different ways, and it's going to have that imagery of these Nordics and a whole bunch of serpentine imagery. And these are the Tuatha De Danann, because they are the seed or the She people. And again, you could do a whole show just on that topic there. But in the Lord of the Rings, they're depicted in the same way. And this is an antediluvian story that has these little elementals in there. They have dwarves, which are also part of the ugly group that the gnomes are part of, that make the weapons of the demigods. And in the Lord of the Rings, they're depicted in the mountains making the weapons for these other larger beings. And so at the end of The Lord of the Rings, you have this strange scene that's an allegory where you have them all leaving, except for the humans, on a boat on the water, because now it's the time of humans. That's the flood. This is depicting what happened before the flood, when all of these groups of people were existing. The House of Dragon is entertainment literature encapsulating a time before the flood with all of these types of creatures as well. It's just polytheist history put into entertainment for us. And now we have 2 groups and 3 groups now that are associated with spurious offspring of the gods, separate groups. And you have the elementals, you have the giants, you have the salamanders, which are part of the elementals, which are seemingly like the Nahash, and now you have these insectoids. They're the crypto aspect of it. So what's interesting is with these ones, they are something different, and there's not as much available about them throughout prehistory. But at the time of the flood, the Hopi have a history oral tradition where they are going to be saved by a prophetic, capable people, or at least understand science as to what's going to happen and what might be coming at them. And these are the ant people. And these ant people are going to, and they're great warriors from the subterranean, so in the earth, and they're going to create these subterranean vaults for them to survive the flood. And they're described like these cryptoids, the mantis people, as they're more accurately described there. And they also described after the flood this great white Hopi, this great white snake clan that comes from this island continent to help them re-civilize after the flood. So a serpentine group after the flood. So they're bridging both sides of the flood with people that we know, because the white snake clan would be like those pale white original serpentine giants early after the flood, because they would have just like their procreators if they survived the flood, and like as their procreators after the flood in the first few generations. So now we also have an accounting with Zeus, who goes to an island, who creates a whole race of people that are as large as men from ants. They're called the Myramids. And they're called in this mythos, for the most part, the mantis. And mantis is like a praying insect for a mantis, right? And I think aptly chosen for that name as well. And it's also Greek for the word for a prophet or a soothsayer or an oracle. And possibly even a prophet is extended to a sort of monotheist sort of understanding. And again, I don't think any of that is coincidental when they've come to save the Hopi from this coming cataclysm that they had the ability to see in the future. So what do you take from that? That we're going to get false prophets from a monotheist perspective, from prophets from a polytheist, good prophets from a polytheist perspective, and from an alien mythos, good aliens who are trying to help us get through this age of cataclysms that are coming at us.
That is wild. Man,
and they're all interdimensional.
You are connecting so many dots and threading so many needles here, man. It's hard to keep